Tuesday, April 11th, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
This meeting is being recorded.
Led by Scott.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our first item is open forum. The first item on open forum is to recognize Library Associate Jackie Dibble, who is retiring after 23 years at the J.B. Fletcher Library. And we want to thank Jackie, any of you who've been to the Apple Blossom Parade and some of the library programs. We'll see her work and her creativity and her imagination in creating projects and in creating themes for the library and for all of our youngsters here in the library. And I think Ellen Rainbill is here attending, I think.
And we can see Jackie.
Jackie's here. And we can see Jackie as well. So if we can, Ellen, I think wanted to say a few words. If she's here?
I don't see her.
No? Oh, she told me she was coming.
She is on as a panelist.
There she is. Yep, there she is. There you go. Hi. Ellen, you're on mute. Eric, okay. It's our end. Wait a minute.
Just 1 second, Ellen, we're fixing the audio.
Technical difficulties.
Yes.
Oh,
There we go.
Zoom keeps teaching us.
Okay, we're good.
Okay, well, we're so thrilled to celebrate Jackie and her almost quarter century of creativity at the library. Absolutely, part of her legacy will be the many times we won the coveted Rodin Bowl for our entry in the Apple Blossom Parade. That is really part of her legacy, but she has been a creator and engineer extraordinaire. I sent some photos of some of the things she's done, and we're absolutely going to miss her as we send her forth into this next, life journey for her. And we're going to keep her as a substitute just a little bit longer because we don't really want to let her go. So I'll let her speak as well.
I just wanted to thank the library for giving me a space to do all this fun stuff. I really had a good time. The patrons were fabulous. It's just kind of nice to be enabled that way. To say, oh, I have an idea, and they say, great, go for it. So it was really a lot. It was a great 23 years, I really have to say. I'm so pleased. Great way to go out.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for everything that you've done for the town. Don't be a stranger. Hopefully you'll still be around and still be at least contributing your ideas and your creativity to the library. So thank you very much. Okay. A couple of announcements from the select board. Tom, you wanted to announce a committee we're forming?
yes. So we are digging in early this year to look at the fiscal challenges that we're going to have for fiscal year 25. We just voted on fiscal 24 at the town meeting. And there's a bunch of them. So big transportation contracts, big waste collection contracts, making sure that we're paying competitive salaries. And so we are forming a committee to look carefully at our budget, look at revenue sources, compare ourselves with other towns, look at spending levels in the various places that we're investing, and try to come up with some recommendations for ways that we can meet our fiscal year 25, really a set of options to come back to the boards with for ways to meet our 25 budget targets and challenges. So there'll be representation on the select board, school committee, finance committee, and we would like there to be some members of the public. So we're going to shortly have a citizens activity form available online. If you like budgeting and if you'd like to help us make sure we're communicating, getting the right information out the right way so people can understand it, please consider signing up for that. We haven't finalized it, but there'll probably be 6 or 8 of us on the committee, and the committee will run probably until annual meetings. So it'll run all the way up until roughly this time next year. So please join us if you're interested. We'll try to be as transparent as we can with everything we're doing anyway, so if you're not able to join, we'll try to make sure you can log in and see the information. Thanks.
Okay. And then the other announcement I want to make is that I have heard from some residents in the community that there is some confusion about whether or not the ballot question with respect to 51 Main Street is going to remain on the ballot after its defeat at town meeting. The answer to the question is yes. It stays on the ballot. Residents have the opportunity to vote on it again. If it should pass at by the voters in that election, then the board is then required to call to call a special town meeting within 45 days of the election, so that it goes back to town meeting for a town meeting vote and whether or not it's approved there. So that if it fails at the ballot, then obviously we, at least for now, are done. But if it does pass, we will have we'll have a special town meeting within 45 days. But for anybody who is wondering, it will be on the ballot in May. So, Anita.
So later this week is actually the New Year for several Southeast Asian countries, Thailand, Laos, Cambodia. So Happy New Year to those who celebrate it.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Scott.
So I have to do this because it's been in the town website, but we have a AAA bond rating, and we get that because we've got a great town manager. We had a great town manager. We've got a great finance committee. We've got a lot of great department heads, great boards. So this is truly a town-wide effort to get this rating. It keeps our cost of borrowing as low as it can possibly be. So, thanks to everybody who's involved in the town side to get that rating. That's one of the best tax cut mechanisms we have.
Thanks. Okay. Any comments from the audience for public forum? Diane?
Do you want me to get up?
I do.
Okay.
And
It's real quick. Diane Wood, 122 Depot. Just a reminder that tomorrow night is the League of Women Voters Candidates Night. So tomorrow, Wednesday, April 12th, at 7 p.m. It's going to be in person this year. We haven't had it in person for a while. So it's going to be at J.V. Fletcher Library, starting at 7 o'clock. Right now, there are two competitive races, Board of Health and School Committee, and a number of other races that are there. So please tune in, everybody, and listen to your candidates. Thank you.
thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
This is Open Forum. This is Kathy Lynch on Rush Road. And I know you're going to be talking about the firearms zoning bylaw. And I just wanted to say that I don't think we need to spend too little time on this topic. I think we should take the time to do it right. There's a lot of people here that are concerned that they're trying to rush stuff through, and we need to get the wording right. People need to follow the Constitution. That includes the Second Amendment, and it includes lawful businesses and the right to carry. So I just want to support that.
You know what? No. I made it very clear, Kathy, if you wanted to talk about where you started, I was fine. But I also made it very clear to folks that we were not taking public comment tonight about the firearms zoning bylaw. There will be plenty of time to do that in public hearing, but I'm not going to allow you or anybody else to sort of go beyond and sort of go around what was announced in the agenda. So I'm going to cut you off now, and I'm not going to allow public comment on it either in
because
public forum.
I was misunderstanding that there was open forum again. So first I saw that it was off, and then I saw it was on. So
Okay.
so
Thank you.
my mistake then.
Thank you. Okay, with that, we're going to, if there's nothing else for public forum, let's move to our 7:05 p.m. item, which is a consent agenda. And we have a request to approve the following. The town, use of the town common and bandstand for the Armenian program and flag raising in commemoration of the Armenian genocide. The applicant is the Armenian National Committee. The dates are Friday, April 21st, 2023, from 9:45 a.m. to 10:45 a.m. The second event is the J.B. Fletcher Library Summer Event. The applicant is Nancy Boutte. The date is Thursday, August 10th, 2023, from 1 to 2 p.m. Then we have a banner request for Westford Community Rowing. The applicant is Jonathan Raychek. Monday, May 15th, 2023 to Thursday, May 25th. The location is in front of the First Parish Church. We have a street road closure for the Apple Blossom Parade. The applicant is the Kiwanis Club. The date is Saturday, May 13th. The locations are Main Street, Depot Street, Hilder Street, Lincoln Street, Forge Village Road, Graniteville Road, and Boston Road, and some secondary roads, and the time is from 8:30 to 12:30 p.m. So is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. We're at our 7:10 p.m. item, and this is a review by the Select Board and to act to authorize the Superintendent of Westford Public Schools to sign the Massachusetts School Building Authority Statement of Interest for the Robinson School. And Dr. Chu, is that you?
Yes.
Yes.
So, so every year, the Massachusetts School Building Authority has a very specific window of time where they allow districts to submit statements of interest for future projects. And when we started the feasibility study that we've been conducting this year, we didn't initially anticipate that we would have data to submit a statement of interest this year. The deadline is Friday, this Friday the 14th. And when they presented, when SMMA, the company that we've been working with for the feasibility study, when they presented even their initial draft information to us about the different facility needs in the schools, they presented to the school committee that they felt like moving forward with a statement of interest for the Robinson School would be in our best interest, and we had the data in order to do that this year so that we would not lose a year of that process, because it can take multiple years for any type of to any consideration to take place. So what the school committee did, we're completing this statement of interest. It'll be submitted on Friday. It's focusing on the Robinson School, specifically all the different data that they've shared with us about the concerns with the building, and then the MSBA looks at it, determines whether or not it's something that they would welcome us into their programs for consideration for reimbursement, but there's no actual determination as to what type of work might be done, because then that in itself is a whole process. So what we're asking for you to do tonight is to just vote to authorize us to submit this statement of interest. Even in the language of the vote, you'll see that it says that there's no commitment to future projects, there's no commitment to future well, any type of future commitment on your part or on the school's part, but this allows us to put our foot forward for them to consider us for potential work. And I think having your vote might be a new part of the process. I'm not sure if it required, if previously, I know they made some changes this year, and I believe it was having the select board as well as the school committee take a vote. And so then if you do vote in favor of doing this, then I will have to sign it electronically. Town manager will sign it electronically. Chair of the school committee signs it electronically. And we ask for the town clerk to submit official evidence of the vote this evening.
Okay. Questions or comments? Anita?
Just for clarification, did you say you were also working on a letter to accompany this form? Or no, or did I misunderstand that?
No, the language, you should receive the actual language. They need that language to be very specific, so then that's what I was talking about. The statement of interest in itself is a 28-page document that has all of the technical aspects of the school and the educational program and all of those aspects, and that'll be submitted electronically on Friday.
I was going to say.
Just to make sure, that's independent of this form that you're asking for us to approve.
What I'm asking you to do is to authorize me to submit the statement of interest.
Okay.
Yeah.
But we don't need to look at the statement of interest?
It's actually in the packet. Oh, you want the whole pack? You want the whole statement of interest?
The whole statement of interest is, I mean, I did share the working draft with the school committee, and they had seen it, but it's not completed yet. It's 90% completed, but we're still working on it this week. But the aspect of this isn't about approving the statement of interest, it's about authorizing me to submit a statement of interest.
Yeah, I understand that,
Yeah.
but I just thought it would be nice for us to see it too. But that was my question.
Sure.
You had a question?
Just for the public, so this sounds like it's a good idea, we should do this because it gives us an option we wouldn't otherwise have. When do you expect the broader report that you've been working on to be available to the public, just so people get a broader sense of?
So the final report, we were originally anticipating that they would have it by May 15th. Now we're looking at towards the end of May because we made this shift when we looked at some of the initial information that they have in their draft. And so we decided to actually take a couple of weeks to focus on putting information into the SOI so we just adjusted their timeline. So now it's the end of May is when we're expecting it, end of May, beginning of June.
John?
Yeah, my initial concern was whether or not there was a commitment of funding in this, and it looks like there isn't. Do they have, by any chance, ask you to sign a general contract form for this? I don't have a copy of it right with me, but we've used that on other contracts.
There isn't, since it isn't a commitment on our part, there isn't a general contract as a part of this. It's really, the statement of interest is, we're asking them to consider looking at one of our schools for potential future projects. And so what they've done is they've now created, which I think is very smart, a process that has a school committee and the select board authorize this so that you don't have superintendents just sending in statements of interests on their own to the MSBA to consider things. But there really is no commitment on our part to proceed with anything. There's no financial commitment in any way. It's what Tom had suggested. It gives us an opportunity, and it allows us to have more options sooner than if we wait.
Okay, good, thanks.
Scott?
I mean, basically, the analogy is it's the day after Christmas. The line Yankee Candle is a mile long. We're getting a spot in line. But we aren't obligated to go buy the Bayberry scented candle. It's the only thing left in stock, right?
That's really good, yeah.
Perfect. All right, any comments or questions from the audience? I don't see any. So, you need a vote from us to authorize you to submit the statement of interest. Do I have that right?
That is correct. I actually need to go into record the actual language from the vote, because they gave that to us, and both committees had to actually read into the record the resolved on this day, that
Okay.
long.
Our town manager is going to read it for us.
Excellent idea.
Please bear with me. Resolved, having convened in an open meeting on April 11th, 2023, prior to the closing date, the Select Board of Westford, Massachusetts, in accordance with its charter, bylaws, and ordinances, has voted to authorize the superintendent to submit the Massachusetts School Building Authority the statement of interest dated April 14th, 2023, for the Colonel John Robinson School located at 60 Concord Road, Westford, Massachusetts, which describes and explains the following deficiencies and the priority categories for which an application may be submitted to the Mass School Building Authority in the future. Priority number 5, replacement, renovation, or modernization of school facility systems such as roofs, windows, boilers, heating, and ventilation systems to increase energy conservation and decrease energy-related costs in a school facility. Priority 7, replacement of or addition to obsolete building in order to provide for a full range of programs consistent with the state and approved local requirements. And hereby further specifically acknowledges that by submitting the statement of interest form, the Massachusetts School Building Authority in no way guarantees the acceptance or the approval of an application, the awarding of grant, or any other funding commitment from the Massachusetts School Building Authority, or commits the City, Town, Region, or School District to filing an application for funding with the Mass School Building Authority. Is there a motion?
Is there a motion to approve? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
We will get you
Thank you very
the
much.
signed document that you need.
Excellent. And then we upload that with a PDF. And I'll make sure that I'll share the final copy of the SOI with all of you as well, too.
Would it make sense to also share it with the permanent town building committee, just as a heads up, or?
I think
I
once
understand
we,
it's very early.
right, I think once we kind of get into any type of process, if we ever hear from the MSBA, then I think we would have those conversations. We could certainly share it with them as well too, because it's, for the most part, it's taking information from the draft report, or from the draft, which will then eventually be in the final report, and answering questions on the SOI with that information, and that is also gonna be made available to everybody, so we can do it in multiple forms. Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Okay, we're at our 7:25 PM item, which is the item I think you're all here for. So before we start, I do also want to let people know that although we are not accepting, or we're not going to take public comment tonight, the Select Board has received several emails from folks. We will make sure that those emails become part of the public record. In addition, if after tonight's meeting you have questions or you have further comments that you would like to submit to the Select Board, you can do that, and we will also make those comments part of the public record as well. In addition, moving forward, if there is to be a bylaw that is proposed, then what will happen is that it will be advertised. There will then have to be public hearings held by the planning board, because it is a zoning bylaw. Those meetings are public hearings where the public will be able to comment and participate. After that, assuming that if it is recommended for town meeting, at some point it has to come back before this board for us to hear and for us to make a recommendation. That will be a public hearing. And then ultimately, if it goes to town meeting, of course, town meeting is the, ultimate public hearing where everybody can comment and participate at that point in time. So there will be multiple opportunities moving forward if this is to be a zoning bylaw for everybody to participate. So I think with that, I guess, Jeff, and Chief Chambers, I'd like to turn the meeting over to you folks, and actually.
Seats for the planning
board. And this is a joint meeting with the planning board, so we have planning board members here, us, the select board, and I think with that.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and members of the Select Board for inviting us to the discussion.
Well, thank you for coming.
Thank you, certainly.
Is this an official planning board?
Yep, I'll call to order the special planning board meeting of Tuesday, April 11th, 2023, for the purpose of having a discussion with the Select Board on the potential bylaw amendment for firearms businesses.
And just to recap for folks, how this got here is that a potential bylaw was presented to the Select Board back on February 28th. We had comments, and we sent it back to the Planning Board with our comments, asked them to take a further look, do some further research, and then to come back to us with their recommendations and thoughts. And so that is, I believe, where we are tonight.
And if there are any votes, we do have a member of the planning board remote, so it would be a roll call vote if any votes are taken by the planning board.
Thank you. Right. All right, so I think with that, I will turn it over to you, Jeff, and to Chief Chambers.
Thank you. I think you covered about a third of what I was going to say already, Andrea, so we're off to a good start. So tonight...
Yeah, actually, speak up because you're speaking to people behind you, okay?
So tonight, we do have benefit of a joint discussion. As Andrea mentioned, it first went to the Select Board for a conversation, followed by Planning Board for their input. And so tonight is the very first time that we have the opportunity for them to freely discuss between both boards. So to that end, we have a third version of a draft bylaw amendment in your packet. And essentially, that's largely based off the second version that was last before the Planning Board at their meeting of March 20th. We also prepared some takeaways document summarizing the planning board's comments and thoughts about that version. And so the third version here tonight reflects a lot of the planning board's comments on that last version that was before them, It also takes into account two different things. Before I forget, I think we may have someone from KP Law, Justin Parada, attorney, who's a zoning expert. Eric, I'm not sure if you see him there. So, town council did provide some advice. One of the things that was a source of the greatest division amongst the positions of the select board and planning board to date was whether or not a bylaw would require a special permit for the to grant a firearm business. So, from the advice of council, one of the most important criteria to the police chief, and he can speak for himself, was to provide some separation distance between firearm businesses, one to the other. We also thought it would be important to involve the police department throughout the planning board process, both in looking at the security plan and making sure that they were start to finish involved in the process, so there wouldn't be conflicts between planning board conditions of approval and what the police department would want long-term for their ability to monitor such facilities. Additionally, there were some operational conditions sections called out in the draft bylaw, and council opined that we needed benefit of a special permit with the discretion associated with that in order to have those elements in this draft bylaw. So if you feel strongly about supporting the chief's primary concern, it can only be done with benefit of a special permit. And so I know the planning board at their last meeting, they were not in favor of a special permit. However, they were unanimously in favor of supporting the police chief's request for the separation between firearm businesses. So we have a number of things that we would like to get input from tonight, but one of which I believe Mr. Cunningham and the select board, they wanted to have benefit of some graphical information. So if we looked at the districts where potentially these could be cited, right now we've suggested commercial highway and industrial highway zoning districts. You wanted to see what some of those buffers might look like. We have some graphics in your packet. So that graphic shows there's different kinds of buffers suggested. Not all of them have to be included, but different colors relate to different setbacks. We also, at the suggestion of a resident, we wanted a simpler version to look at. And so there's other versions in your packet that kind of have whited out the areas where these various buffers come into play. And so the difference between the two sets of plans in your packet, one includes all the buffers that were suggested. So that is setbacks to schools, churches, childcare facilities, places where children commonly congregate. And then we have a second version where it does not include the buffer where children commonly congregate, because that was not a buffer that the planning board supported at their last meeting. And so we hope the simplified version makes it easier for you folks to get a sense of what the various buffers would mean. We also have a viewer. If you're interested, we can kind of toggle on and off some of the various setbacks so you can see what effects that would have on the availability to site firearm businesses under the current bylaw. And so that's sort of the quick recap of where we're at, and we do have a number of questions that we would like. We also have a summary of the different takeaways provided by both the planning board and the select board. So we have them in a side-by-side comparison, so you can see where there is consensus or not. And so the single point of disagreement, as I mentioned, was the requirement for a special permit. That was the one item that was sort of diametrically opposed. And what I'd like to get a handle on early on from the planning board, if they're willing, is the planning board, knowing the advice of town council, are you willing to consider a special permit approach in order to respect the police chief's request for the separation distances between firearms? Because that would bring both boards much closer together from a consensus. So,
Okay.
If town council is present, I'm just curious as to why they would require, we couldn't do it as a bylaw, it would, or a site plan review, it would have to be a special permit.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
All right. Yeah, site plan review generally has to do with things like aesthetics, massing, traffic to some degree. The types of regulations or the types of requirements that you're looking for with setbacks and some of the operational things are the province of a special permit as opposed to site plan review.
So there's no examples from other towns and cities that have enacted firearm regulations where they had this type of requirement and just only site plan review?
No, and you wouldn't even find that in other types of business-specific review processes. Site plan review tends to be pretty limited to, like I said, aesthetics, traffic, buffering, things like that. Now, sometimes you might have a site plan approval that specifically has some broader conditions in it. And if that site plan approval doesn't get appealed, then you may see some broader conditions. But as a drafted bylaw, you know, the site plan review doesn't usually encompass the kind of things that a special permit would require. Certainly when it comes to things like operational requirements and setbacks.
Okay, thank you.
Jeff, my recollection of the conversation that we had was that a number of us didn't understand the benefits or why we would maybe need a special permit, but I think we all sort of said if there was a compelling reason that came to light, and now I would assume that with benefit of town council saying that what Chief Chambers is asking for, specifically the security plan and the setback to other firearms businesses, I imagine we would be amenable to a special permit. Darren?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Bob, any thoughts on that?
Yes, so for me, the compelling justification was the 500 feet. I took the chief's recommendation very seriously, and so for me, I was on the fence regarding special permit versus site plan review. So for myself now, I am strongly in favor of the special permit.
What form would you like that to take, Jeff?
Well, I think we have unanimous consensus tonight.
So you don't
I think
need an
that's
official
adequate.
vote.
I don't think we need a vote at this point.
Great.
So, progress. So now we have kind of two issues for both boards, and they may or may not be related depending on your viewpoint. So one is there's a number of buffers, potential buffers that were suggested. And I know the planning board was felt strongly about the chief's request. They were willing for some of them for, say, childcare facilities, schools, religious uses perhaps, but they were opposed to requiring a buffer for facilities where principal purpose was for children to commonly congregate in structured activities. And it seemed like, I'm not sure that we had that input from the select board yet, because you want to have benefit of the graphical information and what might that mean. And related to that is, should there be any limitation on the total number of special permits that could be issued for firearm businesses? And so depending on which buffers folks may want to include, that could impact your decision-making as far as whether or not there should be a limit. Because if you impose all the various buffers, you may find that there's not necessarily a need or as much need to put a limit on the total number based on the graphical information. So we just throw that out there for start the conversation.
So I think it would be helpful if you put the graphic information up that shows the various buffers so that we can all see what they are and what the impact would be. And I think, Jeff, it would be helpful for the audience if you explain the different colors and what buffer is which, because I don't think we had the benefit, obviously, in our packets, so we could know it, but I don't think the public does. So if you could do that, that would be very helpful.
So
Just orient the map, because some people might.
Sure.
Yeah. As well.
So where you see the blue and sort of the dark red and that big line that goes along it to the top of it, that is, we got 495 to the north of it, and Littleton Road is that main corridor that's going in between that blue and that red for the most part. The sort of yellow in the sort of 2/3 up, 2/3 over, that would be Neshoba Valley Technical High School. Go to the right, please. There. That would be Neshoba Tech, and so that color represents schools. We have, just to the left of that, there is an approved church project, so the church's religious uses, I believe, would be in somewhat of that blue hatch. The pink-ish hatch, those are the locations where they are facilities that would, whose primary purpose is to serve persons under age 18 who congregate in structured, scheduled activities. And so we have, I believe, another graphic in the packet that identifies what those facilities are. So hopefully you could see, like, perhaps mathnasium, there's perhaps 10 or so or more in that area. We also have childcare facilities. And so it is, we did receive a comment from the public. They thought between the different colors and the underlying colors, it might be simpler to show a less is more approach. And if we do have other versions where you take away where all these buffers are and you see the blue and the red that's left where you could potentially cite. So we could perhaps look at that later. But we have the pink is children commonly congregate, the yellow is the schools, and then we have the religious and the childcare facilities.
So, to your second point, if we did all of these buffers, how many businesses could we have?
So, of course, my staff and I went through this exercise. It is not an exact science, and it does make some assumptions. So if you keep all of the possible buffers that we talked about, we anticipate mathematically you could potentially get as many as 12 to 14 firearm businesses. However, if you factor in some practical considerations such as utilities for the high tension lines, wetland resource areas, if you look at properties that are permanently restricted, say for some of the affordable housing projects, wetland resource areas, we think it's far more likely you'd have a maximum of about 6 businesses, about a half dozen. That's including all the buffers.
Okay.
And that includes, there's, remember, 2 parcels on Makepeace Road that are commercial highway right next to Route 3. So we're not forgetting Makepeace Road. So that's in the mix. But we could only get 1 on Makepeace Road if there are a separation distance between firearm businesses.
Is that 1 included in your 6, or is that 6
It
plus
is.
1?
It is estimated, taking account all the practical considerations.
Okay, thank you. Tom?
So just to make sure I understand, Jeff, so what we're deciding is basically, do we include as a buffer, or the difference, I should say, maybe for discussion with the planning board is, should areas that have structured activities for children be included as a buffer? And then the other topic that you'd want input on is, should there be a numerical limit?
That would be great, yes.
Okay, and those are, if we do those 2, we'll cover the main questions you have.
Most of them, yes.
Okay. You don't have to fully commit. So I guess I'm interested in, if I may,
Yeah.
I'm interested in the planning board's feeling about not including places like mathnasium, which are structured for children's activities.
Yeah.
What's your feeling about that?
I'll take a pass at it, and then I'm interested in your opinion. So my feeling is we're taking 2 paths to potentially arrive at the same destination, right? If the theoretically max number with all of these setbacks included is 6, if we're also imposing a cap of 5, we're essentially getting to roughly the same number. So I think it might make sense to discuss, do we want to have a cap or not? Because at least personally speaking, my opinion on, I think it was item C in that list of setbacks to things other than other firearms businesses, it sort of hinges on whether or not there's a maximum cap. Because if there's a maximum cap anyway of 5, then it adds a lot of, I think, the word congregate is very sort of general and loose and very open to interpretation. So if we aren't going to have a cap, what I would propose we consider is maybe we say congregate in groups of 5 or more, 10 or more, or give some parameters around that so that the special permit granting authority has some parameters to operate within when making these decisions on what businesses are or aren't places where children commonly congregate.
I'll add to that. We also discussed things like the church, the child care center, the school. Those are fairly permanent. They're not going to come and go. Whereas these other businesses, you don't know how long they're going to be in business. They might move. It's easy for them to move. And what happens, you're going to end up with a situation that's very fluid. And one day, today, you have a certain locations that are viable. One of the businesses that caters primarily to children could go out of business or decide to move down the street. And what does that do if there's a firearm business already in existence and they decide they want to move closer to them? So it's very difficult to do any kind of planning, good planning, if you have, if we include the businesses. And as Dylan said, how do you define Marketplace? A lot of kids go into Marketplace or other stores, CVS. Do you, I mean, at what point do you say they cater to children as well? So how do you differentiate between businesses that cater to children and don't, plus the issue of they're not as permanent?
Did you want to add anything?
No, I think those guys covered it pretty well.
Bob? I kind of want to take a conservative approach. I'd like to keep a maximum number on the, in the bylaw that we are proposing, be it 5, be it 7. I appreciate Jeff's estimate of 6, but in the situation that part of the bylaw might get struck, for the buffers, I would like to make sure we don't let the proverbial cow out of the barn, take a conservative approach. We can always change that number as we learn more about what's happening with the special permit applications for these businesses. So I'm in favor of keeping the buffers, and I think as my two fellow members just spoke, there's some interpretation open for that. In addition, as I think it was Kate just spoke to, these businesses could change. So I'm in favor of keeping the maximum controls on this initially so that we can adjust to the business situation. And I just want to make one point, Jeff and the fellow members here, that on the GIS viewer, what shows up as East Littleton on this viewer is actually like the area of Phillips Drive, clearly inside Westford's border. Over.
Anita,
I was actually going to bring up what Kate brought up, so about the fluidity of businesses and how, Code Whiz or like all the Sylvan Learning or something just popped up, and so how fluid those buffers would be with other businesses kind of coming into any vacant spots.
And that's why a majority, most of us were amenable to having a cap on the number to achieve pretty much the same thing.
But I guess I had a question where, what would happen if we did go with the buffers and there was a business that, for example, came in sort of where those two pink, I'm going to just point, like,
Yes.
like here, then what would happen? Like, we'd have to do a whole new, what does that process look like?
So, if I may, at the time of an application, as called out in the draft bylaw at least, they would have to provide a map showing a 500-foot radius around their property. And that's an opportunity to take a look and assess what are the businesses in place at the time that the application got submitted. Some of them are easy to do because they're licensed through the state or their schools. Those are kind of easy to check. Not as easy are obviously these more fluid businesses where children.
And would we would have to have a definition in our bylaw, wouldn't we, for businesses that cater to children?
It would have to be.
There would have to be something defined somewhere.
Well, there is something suggested in there now, but the feedback I'm hearing is that you would like it better defined so it's less open to interpretation. Right now, the Special Permit Granting Authority would be able to decide that on a case-by-case basis, but you would like it to be buttoned up so it's tighter and less open to.
More defensible.
Yep.
One item, and perhaps since we have counsel available, I also favor just a cap rather than that item number C because of the fluidity of where businesses could be. One thing that I found myself just questioning is if a number of businesses were to open in some of the areas that today are not covered by a place geared towards children where they commonly congregate, but they did in the future, and it made it such that a firearms business could not be cited due to the setbacks. is that something that could essentially be challenged by an applicant, saying that we've essentially put a prohibitive ban in place where no business could be cited because based on our setbacks, there's no opportunity for even a single business to say open. So I don't know whether that's something we just want to keep in mind. Jeff?
Yeah. So, you want me to answer?
Yes, yes, please.
Yeah, so the short answer to that is yes. I mean, some of this is fluid, you know, the Second Amendment case law on this isn't very robust. The consensus is that banning firearms businesses would probably, at least arguably, run afoul of the Second Amendment. And the closer you got to a buffer situation that became an effective ban, would be something that would be more likely to be able to be successfully challenged. To the extent there were existing businesses and new businesses, non-firearm businesses came in that would make those businesses too close to, you know, the excluded businesses or the businesses that create the buffer, those businesses would be protected to the extent they already existed before the new businesses came in.
There is a suggested provision for if such an occurrence happened where new businesses came in that kind of effectively prohibited, there is an ability for the special permit granting authority to waive the setbacks if they find that would create sort of a prohibition. So there is a relief for that. However, it's a different matter than having it be more open in general versus on the defense, so to speak.
Tom?
So that's sort of a process question, I guess, and maybe this is for you, Attorney Parada. So if we did not have the buffer in place for like Goldfish Swim School and Mathnasium, and if that buffer wasn't there, I guess I'm not sure in my own mind on a given Saturday or Friday afternoon how a daycare center is different in terms of what we're trying to protect than a swim school, where you've got basically everybody there is a child learning how to swim, and it's full of kids that are there for a certain amount of time, getting certain kinds of instruction. So if the buffer wasn't there and we had some concern about proximity, would the special permit granting authority have the ability to say, you know what, we're not comfortable with the proximity of this thing, which is very much like a daycare center, so we're not going to approve this? Or would we have to have the buffer in the language in order to create that exclusion?
What is the purpose of the buffer? How well does it actually
Yeah.
protect?
Wait, Tom asked counsel
Yeah.
a question, so let counsel answer, Kate.
Yeah, I mean, I think I understand the question, but if I don't, take another crack at asking me. All criteria for any special permit have to be spelled out in a way that makes it what the special permit granting authority does in approving it or denying it or conditioning it reasonable and legally tenable. So the description of the businesses that create the buffer, the more sort of comprehensive they are, certainly makes it more difficult to challenge if a special permit were not granted because a business was too close to one of these buffering sites or buffering businesses or operations. To the extent there is ambiguity or a definition is not 100% clear as it might be, then the board is entitled to some deference in how it interprets its own bylaw. So certainly, like any special permit criteria, any criteria in zoning, the more specific you can be, the less likely it is to be open to challenge.
Okay, so I think what I'm hearing is that if the community had concerns about locating near a daycare center and considered a swim school to be basically the same, we would want the language in there then that would create an exclusion around businesses, maybe more tightly worded, but an exclusion around businesses that have a primary business model of caring for children.
If the goal is to have as comprehensively drafted as possible definitions, yes, you'd want that in there. If it was defined as a business that catered to young adults or children, that wouldn't necessarily be not allowed. What would happen if that ever got before a judge? The judge would look at how it was interpreted in the past, how the board had been interpreting it in other instances, and whether or not the board's interpretation in that particular instance was reasonable or not. So I can't tell you no that a less specific definition wouldn't work, but the more specific any definition of the zoning bylaw, the less
Thanks, that helps.
You wanted to, Kate?
No, that's fine.
Okay. Scott?
So I guess two questions, and observation. So first, on a special permit, which I was opposed to it initially, but the whole reason we're here is we don't want to have 80 companies all under one roof, right? So I get why we changed that, but you can itemize various special items, right? So I mean, we're saying we want the special permit to be there for density purposes. Is that become the only reason for the permit, or can you then add more things to it over time, which would be my concern that this thing becomes a scope creep?
So I'm not sure I understand. To me, the criteria would have to be spelled out in the bylaw. I'm not sure that.
That's fair. That answers the question. So
Okay.
Second question, it's probably a little bit odd, but we've defined things based upon land use. Can we define it based upon geography as well? I mean, there's historic reasons not to put gun stores in one part of town. Can we say that it's fine for Route 110, perhaps Route 40, but we don't want to make peace, for example?
So, in general, what we're proposing, we're defining and regulating a new use, potentially, firearm businesses, and we would typically call out which zoning districts it would or would not be allowed, either as of right or by special permit, it sounds like. If you're trying to exclude a portion of an existing zoning district, my opinion, that gets much more complicated, and it screams of an overlay, which we're getting very, we have a lot of those, but I don't know if, Justin, if you want to
I was going to say maybe Justin can
chime in
also-
on that.
Yeah, I'm not sure I totally heard or understood the question, but yeah, I mean, generally, there's a need to be district uniform to a particular use. So, I think the options here would really be make something an allowed use in certain districts. You could still keep the general site plan, the same one that's in place now. Or have a special permit regime that was consistent throughout whatever district, allowed these uses by special permit, subject to these various setbacks that would be worked into the special permit criteria.
Okay.
Did that answer your question?
Sort of. And I guess the third was more observation, but you think about buffers around things like Goldfish Swim School. What are we trying to protect kids from? I mean, if you go to Cabela's, Kidney Trading Post, Bass Pro Shops, there's kids that are buying fishing gear and they aren't traumatized by a gun being sold. So I guess I'm not quite sure why you would. I get schools, I get churches. I don't quite get the idea of this place where kids congregate necessarily, what the rationale would be for that.
Neither did
I'm sorry?
we. Neither did we.
I was going to say, I think that's what the planning board was saying, is that they didn't understand that rationale either. So, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, for me, there's sort of a consistency with something like a daycare center and something that is functionally a lot like a daycare center, sort of what I'm thinking. So if there's a lot of community discomfort or concern, that's the reason. Like, I almost couldn't tell you what the difference is in the end between some of those businesses. Maybe we need to tighten the wording, but and a daycare center, for example. I had a slightly different question, though, which is, I think when we were talking about the cap in a previous meeting, we said we want to make sure that people can have legal access to meet their needs when they have a legally owned firearm, and we do want that. And that implied, I think I remember that implied a cap of, maybe we thought 5 would be a number that could cover the needs reasonably. Can you guys refresh my memory if that's right?
Sure. The first version, we came out of the gate suggesting 3 based on just looking at the licenses, various licenses issued in Massachusetts specifically. And so that was the first go. The planning board, with their takeaways, they felt more comfortable with somewhere, 3 of them thought somewhere between 3 and 5. One of them thought 7, and one of them thought there shouldn't be a limit, let the market decide, and the various, circumstances dictate. So if we look to the planning board, they were really more on the 3 to 5 higher range, and that's why this third version, at least for discussion purposes, suggests 5.
And that doesn't address the one that already is in place.
That is correct.
So it would be 6.
Yeah. 5 plus 1.
I can do that now.
Well, if we're getting to the opinion part, I guess I feel like having these buffers in place gives us sort of the most conservative, but maybe the most appropriate approach to this. And I also think a cap of maybe 5 total, which would be 4 additional. So a change from what's here might be, if we feel like that's going to reasonably meet the needs of our residents, then I think that that's probably a good number, at least from my point of view.
Other comments or?
I heard it by other comments, but on the idea of numbers, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but we used to have one gun shop on Route 40.
That's right.
I don't know if
Chuck's,
you've
I
ever-
believe.
Yeah, we've only had one, so, capping this at, 3, 5, 7 doesn't seem to be, I'm in favor of a cap, but I don't think it's a binding number just because there's a cap there when we've never actually had that many in the past. Pick a high cap, but to cap it, but of all the things to worry about, that's the least of my concerns in terms of personal freedoms here.
So the cap of 5 seems to be appropriate to me as well, and I would agree with you about that. In terms of the buffer, I hear your concern, Tom, but I'm also concerned about some of the things that the planning board is concerned as well, which is, what does constitute someplace where children congregate? And so I think if we're going to have a buffer that sort of includes a place where children congregate, we do have to define that a bit better. You're right, some place like Goldfish Swim where that is where children congregate, so I can, and as akin to a daycare, I can appreciate that. But someplace where, maybe you have, children come in and out during the course of a day, they're with their parents, and they don't really congregate, there aren't groups there. I don't see that being included in a buffer.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So I think maybe the challenge is to come up with a definition of what congregate means. And I don't have that definition tonight for you, but I think that that's the challenge, so that we make sure that we capture places like Goldfish and the gym. I can't remember, what's it called? Magnesium, thank you. We capture those places, but we aren't so broad that we capture places that really aren't what we would consider where children congregate. So Scott?
I had a question for the chief. So what is the law on minors being in a gun store? I mean, can 8-year-olds wander into a gun store, or does it have to be with a parent or guardian, right? So, I mean,
They have to be with a parent or guardian.
So
And
even if you're near kids around, they can't go into the store.
Certainly can't handle the firearm now.
So, Anita?
Well, I guess if we're offering opinion, so I agree with the cap of 4 plus the one that we currently have, so it would be 5. And I would agree with Andrea in terms of limiting the buffers to businesses that are catered towards children or under the age of 18.
Is she agreeing with you or not? Is that what you said?
I'm sorry?
Is that what you said, actually? I mean,
Well, I added to what
Okay.
Andrea said,
Yeah.
more specific.
John?
Yeah, I think I agree with the cap of 5. This kind of shows what I was getting at, where we'd be approaching it, making it too restrictive, just by some of the boundaries that were set up here. I think that needs to further look. I'd like to see maybe a little bit more opportunity, but I think the 5 is a good thing to go.
Okay, so I think it sounds like sort of making small steps, Jeff. It sounds like, I think, at least from the select board, I don't know about the planning board, but from the select board, we have, I think, a consensus, or at least a group that says 5 as a cap. I think we're still struggling with buffer, and, but I think what also you're hearing is, at least from several of us, is can we come up with a definition for what that means in terms of moving forward? And if I'm not representing us correctly, please somebody jump in and feel free to correct me.
So Jeff, if we try to put ourselves in the position of an applicant trying to apply to open a firearms business with the proposed zoning bylaw that we're discussing here in place, is the onus on the applicant to identify the places where children commonly congregate? And if one of those places is a tutoring facility, how is it going to be clear for the special permit granting authority if that tutoring facility tutors groups of children or individual children who come and go with their parents, and then when they leave, another child shows up? Like, I guess the question I have is the mechanics of actually applying this setback.
So actually, to me, this is huge progress. If the biggest problem right now for developing consensus is fine-tuning where children commonly congregate, it sounds like if there are groups of a certain number or up, that might play into whether or not you think it should create a buffer. Is that right? But if it's smaller groups, either one-on-one or, a lower number, and there's, say, a guardian or parent or adult there, that may be of less concern if it's, if it's tutoring one-on-one or one-on-two. Is that what I'm hearing? You don't feel that deserves a buffer, but if there's groups of a certain number?
So I would think it's businesses that cater towards youth. Because if it's just where people congregate, then like maybe a group of kids want to hang out at Market Basket. So I lean away from congregate and more of what type of business it is. So like kindercare or whatever we have that is like a daycare school facility, or if it's mathnasium or taekwondo. So I don't know.
So you're not about the number gathering, you're about the primary purpose. Is it geared towards minors?
Yes, because I think odds are that's where there's going to be a congregate, like a large group of kids. And maybe someone else can correct me if there's a business that you can think of right now in this area that serves kids one-on-one, and then that's just one-on-one. Because then I feel like that's probably not in this district or this section zone area.
I don't know how all the various learning or tutoring centers function. I don't know how small those groups are, but we can certainly do some digging. But it sounds like you're of the purpose, not necessarily the number. It sounds like some others might be more about the number and the word congregate. So I'm hoping to hear more perspectives.
Go ahead. Tom and then
Yeah, so I'm not necessarily thinking that, I'm thinking of something that is probably teaching organized courses or activities that include 6 or more children. I'm not thinking, at least in my own mind, I'm thinking what's like a daycare. That's what I'm thinking. So I'm thinking you probably have a minimum number, and it probably is sort of group structured activities, and the purpose of being there is to be in that activity. So definitely not a supermarket, definitely not an ice cream store. It's something where it has a, I don't want to use these words, but it's sort of like a daycare center in that you've got a group of people in structured activity that, and that's the purpose of that business.
Okay.
I'm just struggling with what we're trying to accomplish with that, because I just don't see, where's the data that says there's somehow a danger in having a retail gunsmith or gun store within 500 feet of a swim club? I don't get it, but.
In the interest of not having you out on that ledge alone, I will say that when the item came before our board, I read 15 articles related to school shootings and religious area shootings, and I couldn't find one instance where someone legally purchased a firearm and then proceeded to walk out the door and commit a horrible crime, right? So you can do the reading as well. Those activities, unfortunately, seem to be somebody comes illegally into possession of a firearm. They've premeditated precipitated this act. It does not seem to be a spur-of-the-moment activity. So I have similar questions to you, Mr. Hazelton, which is, I'm kind of unclear what we're trying to do. Are we trying to protect the children of Westford from seeing a gun shop, or are we actually trying to protect them from, obviously we're trying to protect them from, you know, being victims of a terrible crime, right? I just have not seen the evidence that the proximity of a gun store to one of these institutions actually protects children in that way, directly.
I guess I have a question then. So would you say no to buffers? So not even near like schools or religious institutions? Is that what you're saying?
If you're asking for my personal opinion, I think it's more value signaling the values of the town, and I don't think that that should be dismissed as not being good or beneficial. Again, my concerns are more, I would hate to see something that we put in place for the right intentions be challenged on legal grounds that we've essentially put a prohibitive ban in place, and now we have different problems with a bylaw that we've worked very hard to craft very carefully and thoughtfully.
I think that's why we're involving council now, to get good advice, to make sure we don't fall into that trap. So I think we're addressing that part of the concern. So I think there's some different opinions in the room, and that's certainly valid. I guess if it's sort of an implied question, what are we trying to protect? I think there's an enormous amount of community concern, and I think we can meet the needs of our lawfully abiding Westford residents with the number and type and spacing that our chief has recommended and that we're talking about here. So to me, if we can do both forms of good, which is address the needs of our residents who have this perfectly legal right, and we're able to address the community concern, then I'd like to do both.
Okay, so, trying to move this forward. And also, I guess, before we also move forward, there were a couple of questions that were submitted, Jeff, and so I think you got them as well, and I just want to briefly see if you can address them. And I guess the first was, why does Westford have more restrictive zoning for adult entertainment than firearm business? Shouldn't zoning buffers be consistent? Want me to do them all, or do you want to take them one at a time?
I think one at a time is probably best.
I think so too, because by the time I finish, you'll have forgotten what the first one was. But that was the first one.
John has his hand up too, I'm not sure if you...
Pardon?
Just John has his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Should we be entertaining general questions on this, since this is a working session and the audience can't participate here? And unless they're part of one of the boards that is here, should we be entertaining those questions?
Well, one of my questions, I think that was one of my questions. I have one other question that I would like to ask also, if that's okay.
Okay, they're your questions then.
So if you can answer that one, and I have one other one, Jeff.
Sure. So when we were asked to work on preparing a draft for consideration here, we looked at a great many things, and we do have Second Amendment concerns and challenge to that. And one of the early pieces of advice from town council is if we were to consider zoning districts and or various buffers, if it appeared to be too restrictive, that could be construed as being a taking of sorts and very open to challenge. And so from a practical standpoint, we were focused on this specific task. We did look at more recent zoning bylaw amendments, as we did discuss, I think, at our prior meeting, specifically the registered marijuana dispensary. We were consistent in many respects with that language, which was approved much more recently by town meeting. I will say there are many things that happen over time, and council can perhaps chime in, but there are certain elements of our zoning bylaw that exist now legally that we know if we submitted those same amendments, they would not likely be approved by the Attorney General's office today. I don't want to go over them, but I know they exist. And so other things that change over the years are case law. And as council has mentioned, this is evolving. There isn't a lot, surprisingly, in more recent times. And so we're trying to take a pragmatic approach. We took bylaws, setback distances that were already called out in our bylaw much more recently than back in those days. So we're really here to just get input from this board, but if we were to impose the same setback distances as in that other district, the adult use, I think this would be significantly much more potentially viewed as prohibitive.
Okay. And then the other question I have for you, this is my question about the bylaw itself, and also, maybe you can help me too. When we issue special permits, I know many times, and this bylaw also has it, is that we issue them to a particular applicant. They're non-transferable, both in the applicant as well as the location. Do we also, in other types of special permits, do we require special permits to be renewed periodically or not? I didn't see a renewal for this special permit that, you know, the business had to come back and renew its special permit, but what I didn't remember was whether or not we impose that kind of renewal policy on other special permits.
So in our zoning bylaw, I don't believe we have examples where special permits are required to be renewed. It is something that can be done, at least on a case-by-case basis, but even with Newport Materials, there was no renewal requirement, but there were plenty of instances called out where it could be suspended or revoked for good cause. It is something that is certainly possible, but when we were taking input from the planning board at their last meeting, they weren't even in favor of a special permit. So we did not feel, I did not feel that we should be putting that in, given that they weren't for a discretionary special permit. It is something that can certainly come back in, but whereas they weren't inclined for a special permit at all, I did not suspect that they would be inclined to having a renewal, certainly every year or even every other year. So, but that's why we're having this discussion.
I have a follow-up question then, and it may be for you, Chief. Are the licenses that the folks who own the businesses, are they subject to review and renewal over a certain period of time?
They are. Firearms dealer licenses in Massachusetts are renewable every 3 years.
Okay, thank you.
Follow-up question for the chief. So clearly, a firearms dealer can only sell in Massachusetts what is legal to purchase in Massachusetts.
Correct.
There are some firearms that are legal to hold with certain licenses that you can't sell. Can we make sure that the store does not display items that aren't legal to sell?
I believe that we could regulate that. But the problem is with, if it's an FFL, they also have the ability to sell to other states and ship. So that may be one of the things that we could look at under the special permit.
I would ask counsel that one.
Yeah.
I don't know that acronym, FFL.
Yeah.
Federal firearms license.
Okay, thanks.
Justin, did you hear that?
Some of the back and forth, what was the question
Okay, so,
about the licensing?
In Massachusetts, a gun retailer can only sell weapons to Massachusetts residents that are mass legal. But there are classes of weapons or firearms that are legal in other states, but not Massachusetts, or like a machine gun, legal with a federal license, but not legal for a generic license holder. Can we prohibit those items from being on display in the gun store in Massachusetts?
That would be one for one of the license, I mean, we have people at the firm that do firearms licensing. From a zoning perspective, you know, you could probably work that into a special permit criteria or a special permit condition, something like, you know, I guess I don't know why, if it's not for, if I'm following the question, if it's not for sale in Massachusetts, why it would be on display.
Because
Yeah, I mean, I think that could be worked into a condition. That would certainly be a reasonable safety concern. If Massachusetts has made a decision that a particular gun is not to be for sale in Massachusetts, I think a zoning prohibition on displaying that gun in a special permitted firearms business would be reasonable.
no, when I was younger, I used to collect old bottles, and there was a store in Maine, he had 3 bottles that were not for sale, but they were on display. because they were his personal, gold standards.
I
So just want to try to clear that with guns.
I see. I mean, I suppose, if it was connected with the business, then I think it'd be much more likely to be, successfully upheld. It'd probably be more difficult if it was somebody doing that at their own private business or something like that. But again, there's going to be here, like all special permits, a set of criteria which the applicant will have to prove are met, and the board would have to find, and then there can be conditions within that approval that govern a particular situation.
Anita?
So for the license, Chief, that you were saying that needs to be renewed every 3 years, that's the state license, you said?
Correct.
Okay, are you involved in that process?
I am the licensing authority for the firearms license.
Okay, so could you maybe at a high level talk about what that process looks like, so we can just see?
So essentially, I did talk about this a little bit at the planning board meeting. There's a difference between between the mass license for a dealer and the mass firearms license to carry. It essentially just, as long as they don't have a statutory disqualifier for a license for a dealership, all they have to do is finish the application, and if I don't have any disqualifiers, it's a May issue. So I cannot consider trying to think of the exact word for it, but I don't have as much leeway for the dealer's license as I do for an individual license to carry. For individual license to carry, I can consider suitability. So if they have questionable activity on their criminal history that doesn't meet the a felony level or one of the statutory disqualifiers, I can still consider that. For a dealer license, I cannot consider the suitability. So if I just deny somebody outright because we didn't like some of their answers, that would be quickly challenged, and their right of appeal is through the state police, the colonel, after 10 days, and then it goes to the state level. So it has I would have to base any denial on specific and actionable information.
Could they get an FFL with that kind of a record?
The FFL, yes, they could, because as long, Massachusetts statutory disqualifiers are very similar to what the federal government considers.
Oh, yes.
I have a question for the chief related to Scott's question.
Absolutely.
Chief, I want to be careful how I ask this, so it's only yes or no. So with regard to firearms that may not be legal in the state of Massachusetts, that a firearms store in Westford, a dealer in Westford, had the ability to sell to people out of state. With regard to the security plan that you want to have in place as part of this zoning bylaw, do you either already have, or could you work into that security plan special handling for any weapons that are not permissible in the state of Massachusetts, or how they're stored, dealt with, how long they can actually be in the actual location itself before they're shipped to someone who wants to buy them, etc.?
I think it would be very difficult to get to that level of detail.
Okay.
That way, other than safe handling procedures and either mechanical or locks under safes, I think it would be very difficult for them to force their inventory to be held elsewhere. I think that would actually be illegal. It has to be held in a license, where the licensee is.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. So, let's, Jeff?
Just only 2 more questions that we need input on.
Oh, go ahead, yes,
Who should be the special permit granting authority?
you guys. You're gonna ask the select board who we. I actually, I will certainly give some background as to why. I mean, at the end of the day, I think, the reason that I think the planning board should be the special permitting granting authority is because this does come down to issues of zoning. It comes down to buffers. It comes down to, all of the criteria that you folks are very skilled and capable of dealing with. You deal with it all the time. Quite frankly, we don't, okay? And so I didn't mean to be facetious when I said, you folks, but I think that the planning board it's the place where, other than the ZBA, but it is the place where special permits are considered and granted, and I think that that in this case it should remain there. I think as part of your process, as I know you do, you can ask for comments from the select board about any permit that's before you, but I think that ultimately it should be in your bailiwick, my opinion, but.
So I know that I was the one that was like, oh, we should mix planning board and select board, and just kind of understanding the process a lot more and knowing how laid out it is and all the public hearings and all the opportunity for public input and comment. I also agree that I think planning board would be the best board to serve as the SPGA, just since there is an opportunity for select board to provide input at some point.
Scott?
Just for the record, I was with Anita as a smorgasbord approach, and I also agree with planning board. I mean, that, you know, talking it through with myself, if that's dangerous. You know, all the peculiarities of zoning, you guys know, we don't, so it belongs with you.
Okay, so there's that question, and you have one more?
Yes, assuming the planning board is amenable to that.
I'll just ask my fellow planning board members, does anybody have any concerns with that? I think we were relatively amenable.
The reason we weren't sure about it initially was because there was a concern that there would be what would the criteria for a special permit be? And would it include things that really aren't zoning related? But if we keep it as pretty much the way the proposed bylaw is, I think I speak for all that we don't have an issue. And the idea was if there were things that go beyond or outside the purview of the planning board that are more general bylaw related, that those would be things, if you felt that they were useful to have, to put something in the general bylaws and under the regulation of the select board, say.
Bob, any comment? Want to be conscious of our
No, I'm fine with what I just heard Kate, Andrea, and yourself state. Again, I was on the fence regarding who should be the authority, but I'm comfortable with the discussion here, and I'm comfortable with the planning board being the SPGA.
Okay, last
There you go.
question. Who's going to sponsor the zoning bylaw amendment? Or will it be jointly sponsored?
I guess I was under the impression that, well, my thought was that I wanted to get the input from the planning board, and if there was a set of reasons they either did or did not feel comfortable, then I proposed that we sponsor it. So for example, if for whatever set of reasons the planning board felt like we want to have input on this, but we think that this is a policy issue for the town, then I would certainly support that and be happy to recommend. But, so I guess this is a long way around to asking a question about where you stand now about wanting to support it.
The only thing I was going to add to Kate's comment about who the SPGA should be, that we did talk about in our meeting, was that the select board's agenda tends to get a lot more visibility from residents within the town. We hear from time to time that people had no idea this was even a topic, and that they'll show up at a second public hearing meeting or something on a topic where I think, your agenda just gets more eyes on it. For the same reason, I think a jointly sponsored zoning bylaw amendment makes some sense.
Scott and then Anita?
I mean, we're all here to get together now discussing it, right? I mean, we're hammering out the details together. We sponsor it together, is my opinion.
That's great.
I'm fine with sponsoring it together. I think, and the other thing I think is if we are sponsoring it together, it's just, it's a united front that we present to the town, that, the planning board and the select board have worked together on this and are presenting it as, together to the town for the town's consideration. So that makes sense to me as well.
Okay.
So,
Can we go, Jeff?
Next step.
next steps, yeah, we need to figure out,
So the next steps would be making some adjustments to the draft language, fine-tuning the children commonly congregate, see if we can pin that down a little. We have to work on a public hearing notice with town council, and then go about that process. But I assume both boards would want to see finalized draft language before we publish public hearing notice.
I think that makes sense.
So that'll play into when we can start.
So when's your next meeting?
We have a May 1st and May 15th. So we would have to, I believe, get a public hearing notice in tomorrow for the May 1st. So
Okay,
May
that's-
15th, in my opinion, is the absolute earliest that we could have a public hearing notice for that meeting to start the public hearing. It would be published earlier, but it could be the following meeting, depending on when we have updated language and when you folks have an opportunity to review it.
Scott and
There's a
Angela.
timing issue, so if somebody applies for a gun store permit tomorrow, is that on hold because of where we are now, or at what point does that become on? I know it doesn't require a time meeting vote to have that happen, but at what point do we freeze any future
So
application?
I won't use the word freeze, but when the public hearing notice is published in the newspaper, that creates a dividing line. So anything that comes in before that, it's before, it would be pre-existing non-conforming if they are able to come into existence before we have that bylaw. For applicants that come in after the public hearing notice and before the town meeting vote, they don't have the same protections. So because of the notice, once published, they would be subject to zoning enforcement if town meeting approves the amendment, and it looks like council may be getting ready to chime in.
Justin, you ready to chime in?
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, I think, it was sort of tricky, an application that came in after the publication, but before town meeting would have to be treated as if the bylaw didn't pass, right? So in essence, someone would be asking for site plan approval, which is really all you need at this point for farm business in Westford, sort of subject to their own risk, so to speak, that they then would have to go get a special permit if the special permit provisions pass. In other words, there's no mechanisms, because it really is an as-of-right use now, right, just subject to site plan review. That will be the status quo unless and until the bylaw is approved.
But if the
But the
bylaw,
difference from what Jeff was talking about is post-publication, the protections afforded to a pre-existing non-conforming use. So in other words, exclusion from the special permit criteria wouldn't apply to a business that came in after that.
Tom,
So when are you planning to publish the special meeting hearing notice?
Well, it sounds like as soon as we have draft language that we send to both boards, that you have the ability to view it before we publish the legal notice, unless you would like us, working with council, to get a notice published. And again, the notice we want to be careful about. It needs to be broad enough, but specific enough at the same time. So I don't like the idea of publishing a notice before we have good language coming out of the gate with. To me, we want to just get the language as soon as possible, sent to both boards, and when there's a comfort level, as soon as, we can still work on the draft public hearing notice before then, but we want to, I think, delay publishing the notice until we have input from you folks on updated draft language.
But it'd be possible, say, so let's say you say you'd like a comment within 48 hours of sending the draft to us, and people are reading carefully and sending you notes if they have them. If there's subsequent language changes that come up just for corrections or for minor adjustments, you can make those after you've published the meeting notice, right?
So through any zoning bylaw amendment, the planning board public hearing process, some changes can occur and oftentimes are expected to occur. Just need to make sure that those changes fall within sort of the box outlined by the public hearing notice. So that's why we're going to be very careful when we work with council that any possible likely changes would still be covered by the public hearing notice.
Okay.
If we stray from that, that could create an issue.
So you can get that advice and share that with us. I guess what I don't want to do, or would recommend we not do, is add 4 more weeks of like reviews and having to have a meeting about it and then comments back and forth. It sounds like you'll work with council to get sort of close feel like we're comfortable and that we're in the edit zone, and then you can publish. Or is that not your thought?
We're just looking, if you want to see benefit of the updated draft language before we have a public hearing notice published, we are happy to do that, and there's some good reasons to do that. But if you are feeling the public hearing notice, it's important to get that published sooner rather than later. You know, we're here to take that direction from you folks.
So your next meeting is May 1st, is that what you said?
It is.
Oh, okay. Our next meeting is the 25th. So,
There's not much difference.
no, there isn't, but if you've given it to us on the 25th and we've taken a look at it and we've sort of said, yep, okay, we're good, then at your meeting at the planning board meeting on May 1st, you've got our input, you can go forward, and you don't have to come back to us after May 1st. That's what
I got you, yep.
That's what I'm trying to get to. So if we could, can you be prepared with a new draft by April 25th?
We would be happy to do that.
Thank you so much.
I don't see a smile, Jeff.
So I just want to let everyone in the room know that we're having some connectivity issues and the internet is down, so people joining us remotely are not able to hear the discussion probably for the past 3 minutes.
Oh dear.
So I just want to make everyone in the room aware of that, and anybody watching on cable television. We have contacted the IT department to see what is going on. We're trying to troubleshoot.
Okay.
Interestingly enough, my Zoom is still up.
Mine has not.
Mine is up on one. Yeah, mine is up.
Mine's down.
But Westford Cat is still rolling, so if
Yes.
people are watching live on YouTube or watching later,
They should switch over to
Yeah.
that. But there may be people at home who are trying to participate hybrid for the rest of the meeting that might be struggling, so I just want to let everybody know that right now.
Okay. So, okay, so I think you have marching orders?
We do.
All right, and we will see you back here on April 25th.
Can't wait.
I know. Before you all go, first of all, thank you to the planning board for joining us tonight. We very much appreciate it. Thank you, planning board, Jeff, Joe in the back, I see, and Chief Chambers and everybody who has worked on this. We appreciate all your hard work. We know we've put you under some stress and strain in terms of a timeline, and we recognize that and are grateful and appreciative of all the hard work that you've been doing. To the audience, thank you. Appreciate your attendance tonight. And as I said, if there are written comments that you'd like to submit, the record is open and you can submit your written comments. And we will actually, you can submit them to the select board. We'll make sure they get to the planning board as well. So, thank you all.
Thank you.
I just want to point out, the meeting for the 25th, I cannot be here.
Okay. Will somebody, if we need somebody in your stead, can we
Yep.
send somebody?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
I move that the planning board adjourn.
Second. Motion is second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys. Thank you all for your service.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for your
Thank
help
you.
tonight.
Have a good night.
Yeah, you as well.
Do we want to
Okay.
let, is there a way to let Justin know that we're through with him?
Yep, I can send him an email.
Okay.
He probably got,
He's also in the.
we're trying to use a hotspot to
In the
get back
desert.
on.
Bob Schaffer is showing his background. He's like stepping out on his balcony.
All right, we're at our 8 PM item, which is a meeting with the town moderator to review the 2023 annual town meeting. So, good evening.
Hello, everybody.
I
I've
think
got a little, if I can just do a little synopsis.
I was gonna
get
say,
us going.
the floor is yours.
Thank you, thank you. So, as you all know, we had our annual town meeting for this year on March 25th. And we started at 10 a.m. and finished around 3:30, much to my surprise. And at our high point, we had about 487 voters there, which is better than it's been before, but still not as good as I want it to be. We decided on 24 articles, and I just want to give a special thank you to Westford Cat for both the preparation they did and putting all the information out in advance, as well as their coverage at the meeting, including their live blog and their video presentation, which is also now available online through YouTube. So just a couple of high points. When we used our clickers again, they worked very, very well, and everybody seems to really like them. We had our meeting mentors in the audience, and they got a few questions each, so half a dozen people who might have left frustrated because their questions weren't answered, got their questions answered quietly and on the side, and we're very satisfied with that. We had our free childcare for the first time, this new program, and I really want to thank Michelle Collette, whose enthusiasm really made that a very, very good thing. About 12 kids were there, and they all seemed to have very positive comments. The families all have positive comments, so I feel like that's something that can grow as a program. We had our free transportation again, and Bob Rafferty continues to be diligent about doing that, even though we really have not had much participation in it. I'm not really ready to
Recording in progress.
Oh, good.
Here we are.
I think we're back.
We're done with the firearm discussion from Krista.
Okay.
That's right. Thank you, Justin.
But yeah, we'll get it sorted out. I mean, I think the next steps are once we get these few things worked out, then we'll have to figure out how to draft the public notice, and then we'll go from there.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a good night.
Okay.
We had technical difficulties.
Yeah, I know.
as you heard, so.
So the free transportation is where I was, and I'm not ready to give up on that yet. I'd really like to try to advertise it as a green option maybe next year, and see if people will do it more as a carpooling thing. Our alternative seating area didn't get much use, and I think that's probably because we had the childcare downstairs, so people were using the childcare and not using the alternative seating. Again, I'd like to see how that goes for the next couple of times before making a final decision. We had the WA students there doing a great job, both with guiding people around and selling coffee in the front of the Bell lobby. That was very, very well received, and we'll continue to do that. Having all the information available in advance and the presentations available in advance on the town website was really very, very good. We've been sort of building that up the last couple of years, and it's really good to have one single place to send everybody to get their information, and people do seem to really like it. And lastly, I'd say probably the worst problem we continue to have is that people can't see and read the screen from the back of the room. But we're going to try and work on that and it's nobody's fault. It's just a big room, and it's virtually impossible to get the print big enough on the screen for people to see way in the back. But we've got some ideas we'll work on, and Lynn Cohn actually volunteered tonight to work on that with me, so she's always a good person to have. And we'll work on trying to fix that for the next meeting.
Is there a way to, like, and I don't know if you could do this or not, but is there a way to have screens like, sort of halfway down or something on the sides that would show what's up on the front screen?
Like we have here.
Like what?
Like we have right here.
Like we have here, right.
Yeah, this is exactly what Kristen suggested. A couple of people were talking about it at the front of the room, and Kristen said, we need to get some screens for the back, and we all went, yeah, that seems like a really good idea. So that's something we can work on between now and the next meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And that's about it, so I'm happy to answer any questions anybody has.
Questions or comments? Tom?
Just, hi.
Hi.
How many people took advantage of the childcare?
12. There were 12 kids down there.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah,
That's
it
great.
is
So
great.
that's 12 or maybe a couple fewer families are able to participate that couldn't have otherwise, so, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we were one of those families. So my husband was able to attend town meeting when he's usually the one who's watching my kids, or our kids. So we were there and the kids loved it. But then instead of going back for the childcare section, they actually wanted to sit with my husband for the second half after lunch. So then they were just sitting up in the bleachers with him, and he really enjoyed town meeting. So he was definitely interested in participating after lunch. Just kind of.
That's great to hear. That really is. I've been trying to emphasize that kids can stay in the audience and be there if their parents want them to be, as long as they're not disrupting the proceedings. So that's great to hear.
I've asked my husband to watch select board meetings, and he's like, "It's not town meeting." I'm like, "Look, your wife is on select board." Anyway,
So, town meeting passed 2 resolutions that were directed at us. Is that on topic for tonight, or is that going to be a different agenda some other night?
I was gonna put them on for a different, for, follow-up meeting,
Okay.
if that's okay.
That's fine,
Yeah.
you're the chair, I just want to take the right direction, that's all.
I didn't forget about them, I
Okay.
just put them on for a different meeting. I figured we had enough on our meeting tonight, so.
Fair enough.
Okay, any other comments? Okay.
So if I could
Yes.
just bring one other thing up.
Of course.
The third week in October the Monday is October 16th. I'd just like to get the special, I'm not saying you have to do it tonight, but I'd just like to get the special town meeting date set up as soon as possible so people can get it on their calendars. And then once we do that, have you send out perhaps the same letter we sent last time, asking the organizations, sports organizations, rec organizations, and everyone else in town not to schedule anything for that night. It's not usually a problem in the evening, although there are games, basketball games and things like that, so.
And it'll be at the academy again? Is that
Yeah.
the plan?
Yeah, unless anybody has an issue with that, I think that's going really well at Westford Academy.
Usually do it about now.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we can put it on, let's put it on for our next meeting. We'll set the special town meeting and the timeline that goes with that, Patty.
Great.
So we will do that, and we'll announce it at our next meeting.
Great.
And I'll just add one thing. We did have a department head meeting this morning, and one of the topics I wanted to gather and collect was input on department heads' participation and their reaction to town meeting. So I have some things that I'll communicate back to Angela and the board. Just nothing major, just getting their feedback and their thoughts and how things went and any comments that they received. So we'll collect that as well.
That's great. All feedback is helpful.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all for your support.
Thanks, Angela.
Thanks.
All right, we're at our 8:25 PM item, which is a continuation of the ARPA funding request to determine allocations, along with starting to review and consider some new and existing requests for funding. So, Dan, welcome.
Hi.
Good to see you in person.
I know, it's been a while.
So, I guess, do you want to start to review projects approved and everything? And first of all, I would like to thank you and Kristen for all of the wonderful information you put in our packets in easy, readable form and charts. Much appreciated, so thank you.
We keep improving upon it, so. So we have a memo in your packet tonight for the ARPA request. And just a quick financial overview that's a little bit up above Eric. So we received all the money to date, the 7.4 million, and through the last process of reviewing all the outstanding projects, we're able to close out just under $19,000 for projects that were completed. So we can add that back to the total that's available to appropriate. And so to date, we've appropriated $5.5 million for 74 different projects, and we have $1,880,912 remaining. So what we did here is we broke down the request for consideration. This is everything that's listed on the ARPA request form to date. We broke it down to 3 meetings for April 11th, April 25th, and May 9th. We're going to go through these tonight, so I don't know if you want me to read them off now, or we can do it as we go.
And we also have department heads, probably remotely
Present.
or here in the audience, if there are specific questions on the April 11th. Maybe if you go through what the options are for the overall consideration before we go through
Sure. So
today's,
Eric,
that would be helpful.
If you go to the bottom of page 2, Eric. So here, a little bit higher. There we go, right there, funding options. So we just wanted to make it easy for the board, just to lay out the possible ways to go about funding this. We can wait until the May 9th meeting after you hear all the projects to make allocations. We can fund some urgent projects along the way that I know we have a couple that are a little bit urgent that wouldn't be a bad thing to do, and then do the majority on May 9th. Or we can just fund as we go and, fund ones, not fund others, and just clean up the sheet as we go. So it's up to the board, but happy to do anyway.
I think, go ahead.
I was going to say, except for the urgent ones, which we should definitely talk about, I guess I would prefer to see the totality and then come back and
I think that's the way we've been doing it, is to see the totality, unless it's urgent. So if there are ones that are urgent,
There's a couple smaller ones that are urgent that possibly we could.
yeah, if you can, as we go through, if you point those out to us, then we can take a look at those that are urgent.
And Dan, so the total request is about a little over 2 something, and the total amount is 1.8. So we should have in our minds that we're only gonna be able to fund maybe 2/3.
About
Just
that, yeah.
if people are keeping a mental tally, okay.
Yes, we can't fund everything that's requested, yes. Great, so,
You want to go through what tonight's are?
sure.
Yep.
So,
Great.
the first, I'll take the first two right now. These were, submissions from, Scott and Tom for the, active assailant training for school safety. We did the first one, that was performed, I believe, in the fall, Chief, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. So, it was just under $16,000 the total cost, and we just closed out the remaining balance for that, but we wanted to have separate training spaced out in future years.
Just to interject that, I think, talking with the chief, it wouldn't be school safety per se, it would be school, because there could be a corporate address. In fact, we just, this week, had a case where a bank was unfortunately hit. So it was meant to be active assault training, yes, but it may not be a school. It might be a house of worship, for example. It should be a different scenario, perhaps.
Yeah, we can update the request.
So it's still town and school safety, but it may not be a school facility.
So these two weren't urgent at this point, but they're out there. Do you want me to keep going, or?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
great.
Keep
So
going. I'm sorry.
Next up is the, number 3, the fire department overtime, the FEMA deficit. We were, the balance that we now have is $538,393. We are expecting a reimbursement in the next week or two of just over $20,000 of money that's been committed. However, we were able to reduce this from the original amount, $595,000. So this would get rid of that deficit on the budget.
Okay. If we fund it.
If we fund it.
Right, got it. Okay.
All right, so.
And we're still trying to pursue refunding from FEMA, right?
We are still pursuing it. The DOR is not making us raise the deficit on the recap this year. They might next year. So at some point, we do have to address that, but
Okay.
not at this moment.
Okay.
Next up, we do have Deputy Mike Dennehy here for the LifeScan Wellness request.
He's behind you?
So, when myself and Chief Chambers were before you in the fall, it was LifeScan. I recently got notified by the company that they are ceasing all operations in the Northeast and other part of the country due to staffing problems. So we kind of got on board with Chief Chambers with this Sigma, which is it's doing cardiac. It's monitoring the cardiac of all the firefighters and police officers, because police officers are obviously suffering heart attacks at younger ages as well as firefighters. Right now, we have an opportunity to get on board with a regional process this September. If we don't get that, we don't have an idea of when we'd get onto it next time. But for the time being, it's Sigma. I did put in for a federal grant for the firefighters for the cancer screening. I won't hear for that for a couple months. So hopefully if I get that, that will cover the cancer part for the firefighters.
So the Sigma screening for September that you're looking to become a part of, is there an application that you have to fill out? Is there a deadline, and when you have to do that? We had a cost estimate here of $77,000. Is that still what you'd be asking for Sigma?
It still would be consistent. They anticipate about an 8% participation rate between all the departments. So with police, fire, and dispatch at about 80%, it works out to just over $67,000. So we are requesting a little bit of a buffer in case we have more participation than is requested. If we didn't jointly put this forward under LifeScan before, I was going to try and make a ARPA request for a Sigma assessment for the police department because of the high rate of heart disease in police officers. Their proprietary blood work and screening process helps to identify any sort of cardiac issues well in advance from what the regular screening can discover. Me being in my 40s, I can't go to my primary care and ask for any of this testing because they just won't do it because I'm healthy.
It comes down to insurance. The insurance
Sure.
doctor can put in for it.
Yeah.
The insurance doesn't pay for it.
Yeah, I know.
So what the blood work does is it looks for inflammatory markers.
Yep.
So they do that, which gives an idea of any cardiac problems. I mean, we're both, whether police or fire, we're both at a young age, 44 versus 46. They do suffer heart attacks. We do have area departments that have had this, just like LifeScan, and have benefited from it. So if something comes about and we're able to diagnose it early, we're saving quite a bit of money on the forefront.
In the September thing, so we have been in touch with Sigma because we did get the quote, so we could provide the proposal for services in the packets. They have a round of testing that is scheduled for September that we would like to try and participate in because they do set up a regional area. Tewksbury just did it with Chelmsford and Tewksbury. They set up some of it in Chelmsford. Natick just had a large screening down there with Wayland, Framingham, and I believe it was either Westboro or Northborough that participated as well. So being able to participate in this one in September, I think their base of operations is going to be out of the Arlington Police Department or somewhere in Arlington, and they may come up here to do some of the blood work, but the cardiac screening, ultrasound, we may have to travel a little bit for, but that's what we're trying to take advantage of.
And just like LifeScan, it's strictly voluntary. I mean, that's why we're predicting around 80%, because, I mean, we're not gonna force anybody to do it.
Anita?
Two questions. So was it LifeScan where it was only like a one-time thing though? So would this be the same as Sigma? So only the people who are on the force, like right now, would be able to benefit from this?
Correct.
Correct.
And then my second question is, so let's say there was some sort of indicator that showed that you're like in some sort of position where you might have be whatever for heart disease. Then the person takes that information to their primary care?
Correct. It's strictly confidential. It's up to the individual. We will not get any feedback. It's a HIPAA violation if we get anything. So we encourage them, if they find something, to take it to their primary care, and then they'll go for further testing.
And part of the program isn't just the testing, it is your meeting with the experts to get their recommendations and what appropriate next steps are, and severity of what the disease is and where they really need to take it.
I mean, they do a full physical exam, like exertion. So they're doing a treadmill, you're getting a 12 leads, you're getting breathing, so they're measuring your breathing, carbon dioxide and such like that. So it's pretty in-depth. I mean, they are a sole proprietor, which I was quite interested in.
John?
What was that figure again, 8% or 80%?
80%.
80%
Yeah.
participation. Yeah.
That's what the company, that's what they come up with. On average, it's 80% participation.
So this is a one-time thing, right, for voluntary? Have you thought about, or is there any avenue going forward that this would become a regular part of the, just a regular part of what you do? In other words, every year?
Well,
something that would include the firefighters, especially the ones at risk.
It would be great to get it in a budget down the road, maybe not every year, but every 3 years.
Yeah, there are departments in the area that do this annually. They do it as part of the onboarding process for new hires. They fund it in many different ways, but that would be the ultimate goal. Health and wellness for the police and fire department and our dispatchers is really kind of a hot button topic for us right now. With all the research that's come out, it's very important to us and the town and obviously the employees that are coming up. So that is kind of the long-term goal, is how to get this in and funded for long-term.
It seems like you guys need what I used to call a flight surgeon, somebody to keep track of it. And then do you have a regular fitness?
That would be a contractual issue that.
Contractual?
Yes.
Home weight room?
This is, like you said, this would round out the, we've done well with the mental wellness of our personnel with the app and stuff, the Cortical app, so adding this next piece of the puzzle would definitely help us out.
If we wait till May 9th before we consider that, does that in any way jeopardize your participation in September, or do we need to think about this beforehand to ensure that you can participate in September?
So for us to participate, we can ask if we can get a little bit of an extension, but the original discussion was they were hoping to hear from us by the end of April. So we had made a request to make sure that it was on.
Yeah.
Well, this Sigma thing lays out some startling statistics.
It does. It's,
Your life expectancy is more than 20 years less than the general population?
That's, I mean, it's due to the stress. I mean, it's the stuff we see, the stuff we do. It's you know, it shortens our lifespan, definitely.
So as an example of how beneficial this is and how they can identify some of these issues, I know Deputy Chief Denny relayed a story of his with the life scan. Tewksbury Police just underwent this Sigma, and one of the members that decided not to participate suffered a heart attack that would have been identified 2 weeks prior, and he could have already started intervention. So these are kind of just examples that we hear. They had the officer down in Natick last year that died at 39 years old of a massive heart attack, and that kind of set the stage for Chief Hicks down in Natick and his whole department. He had over 80% participation because of that.
So, I mean, I don't know what the thoughts of the board are, but I think this is a very worthwhile and good program that we should be offering to our police and our fire. You know, we're taking care of their mental health. We have to take care of their physical health as well. I don't want, personally, I don't want you to miss an opportunity to participate in the Arlington, what Arlington is offering. And if they need an answer by the end of April, I mean, we do have a meeting at, you know, April 25th, I think, then we could consider it there. Or if people are on board, we can consider it tonight and fund it tonight. So
personally, I would do it tonight, and they didn't even mention the fact that it's good for them, it's good for their department, it's good for the spouses and the families.
Yeah.
So we owe it to them as well. I'm not sure if we're doing it tonight.
It fits right in with kind of COVID ARPA purpose.
I would entertain a motion.
So move.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Very much.
Thank you.
Sure. Yes, I did allow, I did that. Yes, you may.
Christy Bates, Pierce Avenue. I think this is a great program. I'm glad you supported it. I happen to be sitting next to a teacher, so I would be remiss if I would say that teachers are under a lot of stress too. I understand our fire department, our police department are amazing, and I understand the stress they're under, but with what we're seeing in the news days, don't forget about the teachers, and maybe we can look into this for them as well. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Okay, Dan, we're back to you.
All right, so next up we have firefighting foam. So working with the chief who is on the screen, Chief Targis, we have a request for $16,500 for some firefighting foam. Chief, I don't know if you want to speak to it. Would you rather? There you go.
I think I'm unmuted.
No, yep, you're unmuted.
Okay. The foam is actually for the trailer that we got through the planning board, for the asphalt plant when it was built, that we actually own and we can use anywhere in town. The foam we got for it probably a year after we got it, we found out it contained PFAS, which we cannot use. We just got rid of the foam. It was going to cost us as much to buy the new foam to replace it, to get rid of the old foam. Luckily, Ray from the health department was able to get us through DEP, and they took it for free. So we're looking for that, for the foam now, for the trailer. If we don't get it, we'll just go with the capital request. We'll just take, you know, about a year to get it next town meeting. So, you know, that's just, we do have foam that we carry in the trucks. This is just for the trailer.
If we don't do this, is our town at risk?
There are other resources for the asphalt plant or for any kind of like hazmat that we would need it for. You know, the trailer is not something like you could drag down on one of the railroad tracks, like if you had a train derailment or accident, you'd have to have road access. You know, the main problem would be that, but we could use it other places on the highway or as long as we have street access to it. There is one in the fire district, that's in the air, a very similar one that we molded after, that's available for our use, it just would take longer to get here.
I mean, I don't really want to wait a year to get foam through capital, so whether we do it now or do it May 9th, we got to do it, so I'd be inclined to do it now.
I guess just if it isn't urgent and doesn't
Yeah.
need an action, I guess I'd rather, just personally, I'd rather wait and approve them all together, just because otherwise I'm worried we may misprioritize.
Yeah, I'd like to wait till May, you know, if it's not urgent, I would like to wait till May 9th too, when we have all of them. John?
Hey, Chief, do you use this foam for anything other than the asphalt plant?
We could use it for, any kind of hazmat incident, we could use it for, you know, liquid, fires, anything that's liquids, it'd be used for multi-purposes for, you know, a tank truck fire, carrying hazardous materials to smother the fire. It does have many uses besides the asphalt plant. That's why originally the trailer was gonna be garaged at the plant, but we actually have possession of the trailer and have it registered to the town.
Would you use it on an electrical vehicle fire?
So good question, I believe you can, the deputy might be a better expert on that, on what's coming down the road, if that works on them.
You could use it on an electrical vehicle fire, but the main agent to put out electrical vehicle fire is the amount of water. It takes a copious amount of water. The foam is still, I mean, the foam, you do 0.5%. It makes the water go further. It would suppress the batteries, but the volume of water is what you need to put out electrical vehicle fire. I just want to, we have foam on the trucks. There are only 30 gallons of foam. So this foam trail is 500 gallons of foam. So the foam trail's purpose is for large-scale events such as the plant, a rail car, tanker truck on the highway, stuff like that. This is not something that we're going to be pulling out for a house fire or a car fire or something like that. It's for a purpose.
Okay. All right. I guess it would be, since I don't see the urgency for now, it would be my suggestion we wait till the 9th and consider it along with all the others. Okay, Dan, next.
All right, next up, we have a 911 digital call recorder. We actually have Tim Wickham available with us.
Where's?
Hi.
Hi. Where is he?
We heard you for a second,
We
Tim,
heard
and
you
now
for a
you're-
second, Tim,
back
but
on
now
mute.
you're gone. You're on mute.
He's muted.
You need to unmute yourself, Tim?
I've unmuted, but I think I unmuted again. Are we good?
Now we're good.
Okay, so any questions on this, because I've been fighting with my phone all night.
Yeah, can you just give us you know, and also
Yeah,
for the
so-
public,
yeah,
brief?
Sure, so this, absolutely, and I apologize if I'm jumping all over here, but so this is the DLR recorder, digital logging recorder that has, in the past, for as long as 911 has been the enhanced version, now next gen, has been provided by the state. They just before time, maybe a week or two, they announced to us that they were going to discontinue the funding and providing of these recorders to the municipalities. I think there's about 241 or 251 cities and towns, rec centers that use these for 911. And in the past, we've always been able to tie in all of our own sources, radios, business lines, what have you. We have about 23 channels that we record. And with the state taking this back, they will continue to record 911 and 911 only, but we will not own that material anymore. We'll only be able to access it, I believe, for up to 1 year, which is the standard retention period on the recordings. That being the case, we're really stuck in a bit of a pickle, and this is going to start rolling over as early as July. We fully expect it to be in full swing by August. And with all these other cities and towns jumping on board with it, they're, through the vendor, there is going to be a backup and a problem with supplying everyone with the equipment. It's a pretty good price. Overall, it's just under 15,000. The price of the DLR itself, which has been greatly reduced through the state 911 contract, would be 15,000 alone, and it's been reduced by almost half. It's not like, I'd like to say we have an option, but
Okay,
we really don't.
so we need to
If
do
we want
this.
to be able to continue recording and being able to use it on instant recall, which is used on each one of the comm centers, consoles themselves, we need to act on it
okay.
quickly to not get left in the dust and be looking at this next July in a big line of all the cities and towns that are going to be doing it, because ultimately, everybody has to. I've talked to
Okay, Tim, I'm gonna cut you off. I think we get it, that there's an urgency to this because the state is taking away the funding. Anita?
So
Correct.
will this 15,000 be required annually?
No, it's a one-time. The 15,000 covers the full purchase of the equipment, including 1 year's maintenance fees. The only fee that we'd be looking at going forward for years 2 through 5 is about a $1,500 annual maintenance fee.
And I asked about the life of the system. Tim, could you just give a very brief overview of the life of the system?
Yep, the life of the system is expected to be about 15 years. Really, they will probably go, the one we're on now is at end of life, it's done. But it goes about 15 years. Really, it would probably go 20, but because of technological advancements, we would probably want to look at upgrading on that point anyways, so.
Okay, thank you. Sounds
Okay.
like that we need to do this and we need to get in line quickly. So it seems to me this one qualifies as urgent. Agree,
Motion to
disagree?
support.
Thank you.
Second?
All those in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, next up.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you very much.
Next up, we have the request from Jennifer Claro. It's for the FY '24, '25, and '26 rental, mortgage, and utility assistance. I believe Jennifer's out there.
I think she is.
Good evening.
Hi, Jennifer.
Hey, I just, currently, Allison Christopher, our town social worker, is also participating in the meeting tonight.
Okay.
And at this time, we have depleted all of our funding. And also with the winter moratorium ending in the last few weeks, requests have picked up. And we have several requests in front of us from Healy Oral as well as Westford Remembers. So it's the hope of these residents that are currently in financial hardship that some additional funding could be given so they could possibly submit applications for funding assistance.
So, just so I'm not sure I'm clear, so you're looking for additional funding for, so you're looking for, that's right, we're starting, for FY '24, '25, and '26, you're looking to continue the funding that we'd previously given you, is that right?
That's correct,
Okay.
but currently we have no funding to assist with these cases that are before us.
Okay. Okay.
So in terms of urgency, Jen, so basically, the decision we have tonight is, do we approve, I guess, the fiscal '24 amount and come back to the other two, or wait till the 9th? Can you help us understand? So will there be?
Shoot, I can't hear.
Uh-oh. My question will be, are people going to be in immediate financial distress over the next month if we don't approve this first block?
Allison, do you know the answer to that one?
I'm sorry, I'm losing some of the sounds. Can you repeat that question again?
I was asking Jen if you have residents that are in immediate financial distress, such that we'd want to consider an approval tonight versus waiting for May 9th.
Oh, absolutely, we would appreciate that.
And will we want to be approving for fiscal '23?
Right.
And then paring down the budget for fiscal '26? We don't have a fiscal 23 request before the board this evening, so would you be wanting to modify that?
Didn't we already approve fiscal 23?
But they're out of
They're out of
money.
money.
Oh, I see. So if it's fiscal 24, we can't pull that forward. We have to call it fiscal 23.
Correct.
Right.
Okay, so would you want to make so if there's 3 months left, is that right? May, June,
that's
July?
correct.
So there's 3 months left. So
April, May, and June.
So do you want a quarter of this? We could approve 7,500, which would be a quarter of 30,000, to cover the last quarter for the people in current distress. Does that make sense, Jennifer?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
It would definitely help several families that we anticipate that are needing assistance.
Okay, so I guess I would make a motion that we approve $7,500 for fiscal 23 allocation to this, and that well, that's my motion.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. We just approved 7,500 for you, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, and we'll come back and talk
And we'll
about
come
the
back for the others on May 9th, okay? Okay.
We'll get in touch with
Okay.
Okay, okay. Okay, Dan?
And next up, we have 3 requests from WCAT. We have Sarah Fletcher out there, ready to speak to these.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi, good evening. How are you all?
Good.
Quite a meeting. So, I do have three requests. The total is $12,893, and it's to complete the upgrades to our infrastructure. So that the NetGate security gateway is going to facilitate the external access for remote video feeds and provide better supported interconnection with the town fiber network. We have storage needs for providing reliable central storage for video projects for long-term program and meeting archiving, and also a upgrade on or replacing some end-of-life encoders and decoders for live remote video transmissions like the annual town meeting, special town meeting, graduations and sports, those big outdoor or big events where we're bringing out lots of cameras and having a big production, so help facilitate that better. So the total for the whole, all of the equipment is $12,893.
Okay. So there's nothing urgent about these. This can wait till we consider everything on May 9th. Is that true?
Yeah, they could be put off till May 9th.
Okay. Because our plan is, unless something is immediate and urgent, is to hear all of the outstanding requests and then to consider everything on May 9th.
I guess I would say that the security gateway is probably the most pressing, the $3,100. We do have a gateway that's in place right now, so I guess that we can probably wait.
Okay, great. Anita?
Yeah, I was wondering if it might be a good idea to bring Westford Cat back in again as an agenda topic to just talk more about, where you are financially, just sort of like the health of the organization as you've done in the past, especially with the ARPA requests that were coming in and stuff. I think it would be a good idea to just kind of understand it kind of in the bigger scheme of things, because I know you've been also applying for grant funding as well, just to kind of see how all the pieces fit together.
We can do that, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Would you like us to do that before you leave the board?
Yeah, whatever. I mean, I know we have a lot of
next
stuff,
meeting.
so.
We'll do it, okay? All right. Thanks, Sarah. Sarah, we're going to put you,
Okay, thank you.
before you leave, just, we're going to put you on for our next meeting that, Anita just suggested to update the board. Will that work for you, folks?
Probably. What's the date on that?
25th. You know what? I'll let you and Kristen talk about that, okay?
Okay, terrific. Thank you.
All right. Thanks. Good night.
Right. Good night.
I think that's it, yes?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was
Tom.
going to say, if we're looking on the spirit of not being able to fund everything, the out-year request for 2026 items could be a natural for us to come back to. But the big item on this list is the FEMA firefighter overtime. I mean, that's the whale here. How do we get to a sense of whether we're basically obligated to pay that and we have to do it, or whether we might still get some reimbursement?
So we're going to continue seeking all the reimbursement we can, but, within a year, I don't think the odds are good from what they're telling us, so I think we're probably going to end up funding this ourselves. So using FEMA makes sense because it was used for overtime. No, I'm sorry, using ARPA makes sense because it was used for overtime during COVID. So that is one that would be, it's my top priority on this list of items, just so we don't have to raise it using free cash or something at a future town meeting.
Okay, so on May 9th, when we're looking at all this together, we kind of have to pay this, and you either have to pay it or reserve for it. So it's basically, we basically have to do it. So we only have $1 million minus that. We got $500,000 left to allocate.
1.3.
Yes, about 1.2.
1.2.
Okay.
Because we did about
It's
100
1.8.
tonight.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
John?
Hey, have we already paid the overtime?
Yes, so it's been paid. So we currently have a deficit in our FEMA grant account that we have to raise. That's the issue.
So we have a FEMA grant account.
Yes.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we are at our 8:45 PM item, which is old and new business. The first item is to review an act to petition to the general court for one alcohol beverage retail license to be exercised by NAB One Stop Shop, Inc. at 60 Brookside Road. Do we just have to vote this?
Right,
What do we have to do?
So town meeting approved the select board to petition to the general court for the one additional liquor license for this individual business. So there is a vote in your packet to take. I don't think we need to read it verbatim. I think you can make a motion, and Patty and I will do our thing to get the information to Rep. Arcero, probably through Anita, and he'll bring it to the state.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. You know what? Joe has been waiting here patiently all night, so I'm going to skip down to D and take him out of order, which is to review and act to accept Wendell Place easements. Joe?
Great, thank you very much. I'll try to be as brief as I can. This should be the last time I come before you for this Article 14 from FY22 Annual Town Meeting, group of easements for a project that was approved by the Planning Board. It's been outlined in your packet. They were approved form by Town Council. All the language is acceptable to the applicant's council as well. So we're just looking for you to accept these easements on behalf of the town.
Is there a motion?
So just full disclosure, I live across the street.
I know that.
But I took a look at all the provisions and talked to Chris, and nothing here affects my property, so I can vote on it, but just to be clear, I'm a neighbor.
Okay.
So moved.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Thank you for hanging
Just
in there.
one point there on your acceptance and declaration of sightline easement. You have an incorrect middle initial on one of the signers. Can we correct that when we sign it, or what?
Absolutely.
Or you need to redo it?
We can get that corrected for you, absolutely.
Check that one out.
Okay, thank you. All right, our next item is to appoint Madonna McKenzie to a full member on the DEI committee. Is there a motion to appoint? Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we have an update on the solid waste and recycling RFP process and to discuss pay-as-you-throw option requests and to authorize the town manager's office to issue the RFP.
Yep, so Eric and I have been working diligently to get a solid waste and recycling RFP, so you call it, out on the street when you issue a bid. As you're aware, Acme Waste, who deals with our solid waste, and Waste Management, who deals with the town's recycling, their contracts are up June 30th, 2024. With the market the way it is, it's prudent to have a bid out 12 to 18 months in advance of the contract expiring. So we have prepared a draft RFP for your consideration. Eric has also been working with members of the Recycling Commission and the members of, and Sue Thomas, who's our sustainability coordinator, to make sure that the RFP matches the goals of the town of Westford for a contract that we're looking to issue for a period of 3 to 5 years, depending on outcome. Also, we have a provision within the contract that would call for an adjustment if the town wishes to go forward with a pay-as-you-throw option. So we're issuing the contract knowing that we do not have that option, and we don't know if we'll have that in place by July 1st, 2024, but that would be an option that we would negotiate. I'll let Eric speak to kind of more of the details of the RFP, but because this is such a large contract going out, we wanted to get your input and approval. There are some last minute just typos and a dime reviewing in a final glance. The Recycling Commission is meeting I believe on Thursday evening, but I believe they feel comfortable with us moving forward based upon their delegates. And for me, I just feel a little bit behind because we're within that 12 to 18 month period, but with the transition of manager and all the other events occurring now, that's where we're at, and we're hopeful that we'll get a good bid. So Eric, anything I missed that you want to add to the conversation? We can't hear you.
We can't hear you, Eric.
No.
I think he said that you've covered it excellently.
I do think he said that too.
Eric, are you good?
Thumbs up.
He's good.
Okay.
So
Thank
are there
you.
any questions from the board or any adjustments that you'd like us to make based upon the documents that we've issued? And draft, and we did not, I want to disclose that we did not put this in the online packet because we did not want any potential bidders to have an advantage in seeing the documents in advance. So for anyone in the members of the public who was looking for those documents, there was a reason why they were not posted on the online portal.
It looked pretty thorough, but it wasn't a quick read.
No, it wasn't, was it?
And town council is just finalizing their review this evening into tomorrow.
All right. Any questions or comments? It doesn't look it. Eric and Kristen, thank you very much, and all the hard work that you've put in to put this RFP together. Much appreciated.
Sure, we'll update the board once the bids come in and put together a team to review and negotiate a contract in advance of the board meeting.
Okay.
To sign that.
And then finally, under
Could
old...
we just get a motion to
Oh, I'm
issue
sorry.
that contract?
Is
Thank
there-
you so much.
Is there a motion to issue the RFP?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And then the last item under old and new business is a request to approve and sign the May 2nd, 2023 town election warrant. Is there a motion to approve and sign?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. And is there the last one too?
There was one matter that was added late this afternoon. Andrea, I did send you an email.
Sorry. The last one is to review and act to sign letters to the town political party committees by April 15th, that they may submit lists of qualified party members by June 1st for appointment of election officers. Patty, do you just want to explain?
Yes, but this is also for the registrar appointment as
Right.
well.
Okay.
So typically, the letter has been sent by the town clerk to the parties. That's what we've been doing. I don't know if it changed this year or it was just brought to the forefront from the Secretary of the Commonwealth with, to the various towns, because maybe there's been some lackadaisical about it, doing it. They want the select board to sign the letter. So we drafted the letter. We hope you sign it. I have to get it to them by April 15th. It basically says we need a list of people.
Right. So do you need a motion for us to?
Yes.
Is there a motion to sign the letter?
So moved.
Second? All those in favor?
We'll just-
Aye. Okay.
And to be
Right.
clear, that's for election officers and
And registrars.
registrars.
Okay. Any board reports or updates? Okay, minutes for approval. We have minutes with our joint, we have minutes for the joint meeting we have with the Finance Committee of February 2nd, 2023. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. You're up. Town managers report.
All right, the first item, on your last agenda, we had a matter to request to authorize me to review any electricity and gas supply contracts as we're going to be up for renegotiation with electricity December of '24 and gas, I believe, March of '25. I did review back the agendas that you reviewed the last time that you had authorized the town manager to enter into a contract, and I wanted to tighten that up a little bit to request that you authorize me to actually enter into a contract for both of those services. So we have traditionally used Tradition Energy, no pun intended, for both electric and gas to supply long-term contracts, and that has allowed the town to have much savings for their municipal and school buildings related to gas and electricity. Eric, and he's on, but I'm not sure if he can speak, has been in contact with Tradition Energy along with Dan O'Donnell, and they feel that now is the time to lock in a 2 to 3 year contract for both gas and electricity based upon the markets and their review of the markets years out. We are also discussing with another vendor potential for contracts of this site. So again, this is taken into very serious consideration. We know that we're already going to be tight in our fiscal '25 budget, so that was one of the factors. But I would be looking for the select board to authorize me to enter into that. The reason why is the market changes on a day-to-day basis related to this. So you could say, well, let's wait until April 25th to allow you to do this, but the markets could spike at that point in time. I'm sure Scott could speak to this much better than I can. So wanted to get the board's comfort level and a potential vote on that this evening. Eric might be able to answer any more specific questions as he has much more experience in this than I do.
There's only here from Green Energy, but what does this assume for a fuel mix in terms of renewables versus not?
So we're looking into that. Obviously, maybe not obviously to everyone, the least expensive option is no renewable credits. The most expensive option is 100% renewable credit. So we're asking Tradition Energy to give us valuations based upon 0%, 20%, 40, 60, 80, and 100. And we're reviewing those numbers with Dan O'Donnell to help us estimate into the future budgets.
Right, but if we're giving you the authority to go into the agreement, do you have to give any kind of indication of?
You certainly could if you wish.
I mean, I guess I hear you, like tomorrow the market could be different, but I guess I kind of want to know what we're entering into and what the different, what the difference is if it's 20%, 40%, and, if it's an incremental increase to the town, if you're going between 20 and 40 or it isn't, I think that's at least going to impact upon me, at least, and my decision in terms of what we do, and particularly with renewables and, the commitment that the town has made to green energy and clean energy and sustainability. So that's why I'm feeling a little uncomfortable.
Eric, are you able to either come to the table or speak about what we're seeing in a hike of the costs per year if we just go 0% renewable, and then any indication you're getting from Tradition related to the increase if we tack on renewable?
Sure, and sorry about that. My microphone was muted. I didn't realize, so sorry about that. But in a nutshell, we are anticipating with this contract renewal specifically for electricity, a ballpark of a 60% increase in rates. That's before we look at any additional renewable energy. So there is a minimum level that's set by the state that supply contracts have to include each year, and that amount increases incrementally. So the contracts that we procure meet that minimum threshold. One thing we're looking at is to have the vendor look at, say if we layered on 20% additional or 40%, what that might look like. But without even adding that additional renewable component, we're looking potentially at a 60% increase in rates. So this contract renewal may be difficult to absorb that right now.
Tom.
Eric, could you share with us what the minimum, like what we'd enter at in terms of a percentage under the state minimum guidance and what we'd exit at?
I don't have the specifics, Tom, on the state regulated requirements for the renewable energy, but I'm certainly happy to dig that data up and provide it to the board if you'd like that.
I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, I think to be consistent with the general guidance we've gotten from the town, like if it's 15% growing to 25%, I'd feel different than if it's 1% growing to 2%.
Yeah, I agree with you, Tom. John?
There's only so much renewable provided by New England ISO, right? About 40% of their power that they provide is renewable.
So that, John, you broke up just a little bit.
40% is not renewable. I think more than that's renewable. I think 40% is the natural gas. I was just saying that there's only so much that they're going to provide that's renewable. Our adding 20 or 10% above the minimum is not going to change what they're providing. It changed what we're paying for, but it won't change what they're providing to New England. They're not getting it from somewhere else. So I think it's good for us to consider the climate change, but then I don't know whether our 10% or 20% above the minimum is going to help that or not. That's the point I'm trying to make.
I think Tom's point is relevant. If it's 15 to 25, that's good. If it's 1 to 5, it's not. So I kind of want to know the answer.
I think we need to be consistent with, so if we're trying to get to net zero in a certain time frame, we have to be convinced ourselves that whatever we're signing up for can support that goal, I think. It doesn't mean we have to get to 100% in this contract. It just means that I think, to be able to talk to the voters that have given us this guidance, I think we have to say, no, what we're doing matches the trend line that we need to be on.
I think that's what we're looking for guidance from the board is budget versus the sustainability goals of the town and how you would like us to weigh that. And I understand you need more information to do that.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean,
And we need the money, yeah.
I mean, is that surcharge 5% or is it 50%? I have a very different view of that one too.
So I think what you're hearing is that we need more information before we can authorize you to do anything. Sue Thomas, I did respond to your question. I think the state mandate goes up to about 2% a year. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess if we're trying to get to net zero by 2030, what's the guidance we've gotten from the Clean Energy Committee? I just want to make sure that we've drawn a trend line that says, in order for us to be on track to do that, we have to be at 5% by the end of the contract, and so that's what we're doing, as opposed to just not being able to answer the question like we're blowing off the whole mandate.
We have a hand raised.
What?
We have a hand raised.
Oh, I have a hand raised? Oh, I'm sorry.
Beth Perkins.
Oh, oops. Let's see, then Sue Thomas wrote the additional renewable energy in a given market geography, depending on the type of REC, the consensus is.
Renewable energy credit.
Oh, thank you. Renewable energy, yeah. Hey, Sue, you gotta write in full terms for us. The consensus is that Class 1 MA RECs. Massachusetts, again, RECs are the best at incenting more renewables locally. Okay, I'm not sure I understand that completely, but I think that's why we need more information.
And then Beth Perkins has her hand
And
raised.
Beth Perkins, hang on a minute. Beth, can we unmute Beth? Hi, Beth.
Hello, thank you. So I'm here representing the Clean Energy and Sustainability Committee, and of course, this contract is an important one for us in that it represents a large purchase, long-term purchase of renewable energy for the town, and we are looking for increased renewables. So I've been going back and forth with Eric over the past couple of days on some questions, and in addition to wanting to make sure that we are meeting our climate roadmap goals and purchasing more renewables, we also want to make sure that we're doing due diligence to get the best pricing. So one of my questions had been to to make sure that we got competitive bids and that we were looking at direct energy suppliers as well as energy brokers. And from what you've said tonight, we are looking at another bid from a direct supplier. I'm also looking for the quotes for increased renewables. And I think what we also need to look at, and it may be too big of a question to tackle tonight, but is our relationship with our virtual net metering companies. Because one of the comments that Eric got back to me with when I was asking about renewables was that the fact that we are currently purchasing 60 or 70% of our energy from these virtual net metering companies means that it's restricting our ability to put solar on our municipal buildings, which I think, as everybody understands, is one of our major goals, because many of the towns nearby are doing that, and they are, it's very lucrative for the towns. So what I think we should look at is these contracts, these 20-year contracts that we've signed with these metering companies to figure out, I'm not sure what is the cost that we are producing energy from them for, what is mandatory minimum that we need to purchase every year, and what would be the cost of renegotiating those contracts if we decided we would prefer to get solar energy on the roofs of our schools and other municipal buildings. And that, of course, brought up the question of Amoresco and the industrial, and the townwide audit, which has been delayed a few times, but which we're looking at to provide us with information on, where should we begin with solar. And all of those questions relate to the town's goal of getting to 100% renewable building energy for our municipal supply by 2030. So that's the goal, is 100% renewable by 2030, but we can get there other ways. We can also get there by putting solar on our buildings, which may be financially the most advantageous way to do it, but it kind of, it impacts or is based on the contracts that we currently have with these virtual net metering companies. So those were the concerns that we were looking at.
Okay, thank you, Beth. I think the takeaway is there's. Eric, I'm sorry.
Andrew, I just want to mention one.
You just muted yourself.
You just muted yourself, Eric.
Sorry about that. So I think in a nutshell, the big thing I want to stress about the time sensitivity here is what we're looking at for electricity rates, say last week when we were looking at these in the market. If we look at the impacts to our FY25 and FY26 budgets, if we were to have contracted last week for a 36-month contract at those rates, we still would have had an additional $132,000 in operating costs moving forward. That's without even adding a renewable component. So that's kind of why we're bringing it, because we think the market's going to go in a negative direction, and that number's going to go up even more. So that's kind of why we're here tonight.
Okay, got it. Thank you. I think, though, that being said, I think what you're hearing from the board is that we certainly recognize the time sensitivity of it, but that we need more information. If that information is forthcoming, before April 25th, then if you let us know, then if we need to hold,
a special meeting,
we can certainly do that.
Yep.
Especially with a 3-year commitment. I mean, it's really tying us down.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, we can definitely do that. Thank you for that direction. That's very helpful.
Okay. All right, we are at, I think you're at contracts.
Thank you for getting me back on track. We are at contracts. I know Kyle Fox, the Assistant DPW Director, is here for some of them. Kyle, if you are here for just the trucks or all of, okay. Thank you. So contracts tie and bond for NIPD's Phase 2 small MS4 permit year 5 compliance contract in the amount of $60,000 for DPW. This is ongoing. Extending the contract with All States Construction for liquid bituminous materials, treating stone seal, $50,750 by the DPW. Extending a contract with Newport Construction for bituminous concrete in the amount of $113,400 by DPW. Clean Harbors for household hazardous waste recycling event, $15,000. I'll note that I believe that is this Saturday, so I want to note that for the residents. JV Property Services LLC for seasonal facilities maintenance services for $157,500 total, $52,500. I believe this is for East Boston camps for that facility maintenance by the Conservation Department. And then tie and bond for professional engineering services for Abbott School for the wastewater treatment facility painting project in the amount of $48,000 total by the Water Department. So those are the contracts.
So is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And Kyle, welcome. I think this is the first time we've seen you at a select board meeting, and welcome also to the town. I know that you've just newly started with us as the assistant DPW director, so welcome.
Thank you so much.
All right. So I'll run through these, and if there are specific questions, Kyle is in the audience to help answer those. I believe Steve Cronin is also on the line. Colonial Motor Group for our 2023 or newer Chevy 350 DRW. Please do not ask me what those acronyms stand for. Dump truck, $77,394.11, and two 2023 or newer Chevy Silverado 2500 pickups in the amount of $111,919.20, requested by DPW. A Taylor and Lord for a 2023 or newer International HV 507 six-wheel dump truck, $260,000 by DPW. GOV convection for blue socket access points in the amount of $57,858.80 by Technology Department. Apple for Apple computers, $122,476.50 as requested by the Technology Department. Presdio for a virtual server host, $98,934.91, Technology Department, and then a Ritchie and Clapper Inc. for a Hustler Super 104 wide area mower, $29,168.88 by the Facilities Department.
Motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Is there a motion to waive reading of correspondence?
So moved.
Second?
I do have one comment on the correspondence.
Okay,
Just,
sure.
I do want to note that there is a letter from Mr. Morse regarding the Westford Comprehensive Master Plan.
Right.
He did email me again today, just ensuring that we got his email, so I just did want to note that for your purposes.
Thank you, and I know at least he emailed me as well. I'm not sure if he emailed everybody on the board, but I did want to acknowledge that we've gotten his email and his request about a master plan, and we will talk about that at some point in the future, Mr. Morse. We do know that our master plan is now out of date and needs to be updated. So with that, is there a motion to waive reading of correspondence?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
To second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.